adventures, starting with American TV series. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1: Refusing to Fall in Love. Locke, do you want to go to a movie after school? The girl stood in front of Locke, flicking her long blonde hair. The faint scent of perfume wafted in her, and she leaned back slightly, making her presence felt even more prominent. Sorry, Lim, I'm not planning on dating right now. He shrugged and glanced at his watch, indicating he was in a hurry. If nothing else, I'm going to lunch. With that, he made his way around the girl in front of him. His point was clear enough, he felt no need to repeat it. I told you he's a weirdo. Locke hadn't gone far when another girl approached Lim and said, he's already in 11th grade, and he hasn't dated a single girl yet, but he's really handsome, and he's got a great body. Thinking back to Locke's handsome appearance, and the muscular figure he'd displayed in swimming class, she couldn't help but swallow. She couldn't understand why, despite her good looks and impressive figure, the boys usually looked at her with such hungry eyes. Locke simply glanced at her and didn't look back. Don't be greedy. There are rumors around school that he's sexually suggestive, another girl said, glaring at Locke's back with a hint of annoyance. He's rejected so many girls I can't even count them. There's definitely something wrong. Locke hadn't gone far yet. Despite the noise in the school corridor, thanks to his enhanced stats, he still heard the words. But he didn't think of going back to explain. He continued walking towards the school cafeteria. The food was subsidized, and while the taste was average, it was cheap and the portions were generous, definitely enough to fill her stomach. He didn't consider whether Lim might spread rumors in her anger. She was indeed quite nice, and Locke wasn't completely unimpressed. He rejected her decisively because he had no immediate plans for a relationship. High school in the United States lasted only 4 years. There was no need to be swayed by hormones. He was still in his developmental years, enjoying the future. He had finally been given a chance at a new life, and he didn't want to waste any time. American high schools were like a bunch of rabbits in heat, a real headache. He had been plagued by this problem since he started high school. He wasn't surprised to receive a confession from a girl right after his senior year. After all, he was handsome, with his signature sharp eyebrows, sparkling eyes, a perfectly high nose bridge, and gently curled hair. He could easily rival Leonardo DiCaprio for attention. His handsome looks were enough to attract a steady stream of girls, and coupled with his exceptionally high charisma, he naturally attracted women's attention in the open-minded American society. However, his high charisma was a real problem, creating a host of problems out of nowhere. He also wondered why this dog system could also increase charisma while improving his boxing skills. It was possible. If it weren't for the self-control he'd cultivated over decades in his previous life, he would likely have let himself go from the start of high school, potentially failing to maintain his grades and losing his full scholarship. The full scholarship offered by Stir Private High School was crucial to him. As an orphan, he couldn't afford the high tuition. After a long thought, he rushed to the cafeteria and immediately spotted a skinny, buzz-cut boy standing at the entrance. He was a member of the math Olympiad team and his school buddy, Lip. Locke took a look at Lip. He looked rather creepy, with a shifty look in his eyes, not like a good guy. He looked like the villain strategist in a movie or TV series. He was a member of the math Olympiad team, had a high IQ, and was a full member of the team. His hobby was looking at girls, and because of his triangular eyes and rather creepy look, he now had a bad reputation among the girls. Not long after he started high school, he stared at a senior cheerleader for too long, and the girl's boyfriend stopped him and prepared to give him a good beating. Of course, the skinny Lip couldn't resist, as the girl's boyfriend was a member of the football team. Bullying in the US is much more serious than in the East, and football players are the main force. Football is a very competitive sport, and without a good physique, it's impossible to get selected. Locke happened to be passing by and recognized Lip, who was also in the math club. He offered a hand and, with his newly intermediate wrestling skills, he managed to take down the football player. From then on, the guy became Locke's henchman. Lip was quite discerning, at least for the past 2 years of high school. With Locke as his friend, he hadn't suffered any bullying. Hey, I just saw it all. Lim was looking for you. Did she want to confess her love? As the two of them were walking to the cafeteria, Locke was stopped by Lim. He was discerning enough not to listen in. He had been waiting at the cafeteria entrance for a while, but he was getting a little itchy. He loved to pry into all kinds of gossip, especially about things between men and women. Locke didn't answer and went straight into the cafeteria. Lip quickly guessed what was going on and couldn't help but say, "I can't believe you didn't say yes to Lim, who's so beautiful. She's pretty and has a great figure. If it were me, I would have said yes long ago. I really don't know what you're into." Lip's envy was almost overflowing. Before he even entered high school, he was already fantasizing about finding a girl to share a sweet romance with, but the reality was, no one was interested in him. Locke, on the other hand, had rejected so many girls since he started high school. Why didn't they give him even one chance? Locke turned a deaf ear to him. Lip was usually like a rabbit in heat, and today was no exception. He didn't bother to pay any attention. He headed straight for the counter, grabbing food. Time was precious, too precious to waste. He needed to study hard, so he could go to a top private university, start a business, and have a successful career. With the financial resources, he could have fun however he wanted. If Barney Stinson weren't a bank executive with a lucrative salary and ample personal time, how could he have seduced young ladies with his custom-made suits, or constantly supported underprivileged female college students whose families were short of money? Locke is in the process of laying the foundations. If he wastes his time on girls now, he might be able to enjoy high school. But after 4 years, he'll become a victim of his own education. Without sufficient accumulation, he'll end up marrying an ordinary woman, potentially leading to conflicts over the daily necessities of life. In this country, money is everything, and Locke has long understood this, so personal development and earning money are his top priorities. Born an orphan in this life, he didn't win at the starting line, but instead had cheats. Locke can only strive to reach his goals quickly, only then can he enjoy life. Now, only fools would fall in love. Chapter 2: The Girl's Provocation. Lip followed Locke, constantly nagging him, repeatedly telling him how stunning Lim's figure was, how sweet her face was, and how alluring her temperament was. He assured Locke that Locke would regret this someday. His face contorted, as if he wished he could turn back time and agree on Locke's behalf, taking things a step further. Knowing Lip well, Locke knew he had already imagined the exact location and the exact action. Locke remained silent, pretending he hadn't heard. Boys his age were naturally drawn to women. Although Lip was lecherous and nagging, he could be a source of information, and he could be asked to run errands. He had good grades and performed well on the math team, so he was somewhat useful. At the same time, he had to endure his constant chatter, which had taught Locke to ignore anything he didn't want to answer. At the counter, he ordered 2 sandwiches, and Lip ordered fried chicken and pasta. They both carried their food to the dining area. They arrived early, and the dining area was sparsely populated. Faced with Lip's nagging, Locke finally couldn't help but say, "I've said it before, I have to study, and I don't have time for a girlfriend." "They're not in conflict, are they?" Lip refused to give up. High school girls usually form small groups, and Lim has 2 good-looking best friends. If Locke succeeded, he'd have the chance to spend more time with those 2 girls, greatly increasing his chances of finding a partner, or even losing his virginity. With our IQs, even in a private high school, the courses are much more difficult than in a public one, and our grades won't be a problem. We should just enjoy our youth. Be careful. Locke had long since learned to tune out Lip's nagging. He was mentally working on a math problem when he felt a bump in his side. He quickly steadied his tray to prevent the food from flying off. Then, Locke looked at the culprit, a little girl who looked no more than 10 years old. I'm sorry, the little girl was wearing a school uniform, a stark contrast to the casual attire of public schools. As a private high school, Sterling High School had strict dress codes. She wore a dark blue jacket, a white shirt, a blue sailor skirt, white knee-high socks, and gleaming round-toed leather shoes, looking incredibly cute. Even though she was in a school uniform, Locke could tell she was a genuine little girl, not just someone born short. "It's okay, are you okay?" Locke asked cautiously. After all, he had been distracted by a problem, and if he couldn't control his strength, he could easily hurt her. "It's okay, I was distracted," she said a little sheepishly. Then, as if realizing something, she stared at Locke for a closer look. "You're Locke Lee, captain of the school's mathematical Olympiad team. I'm Locke Lee." "Nice to meet you." Locke looked at the little girl, who also felt a familiar look. "Peggy Swanson." She extended her hand. As he shook hands, Locke took a closer look at the girl before him. Her face was small, the size of a palm, her eyes were curved like crescents, her eyebrows were thin, her lips were rosy, and her cheeks had two faint dimples. It really is Peggy. I didn't expect she and I went to the same private high school, Locke thought to himself. Years ago, Locke knew he hadn't been reincarnated into the past, but rather into the world of a TV series he'd watched called Young Sheldon. Thanks to Young Sheldon's unique personality, he'd recognized him and his mother, Mary, while volunteering to clean the church at the orphanage. Are you a new student? Locke asked. It's a necessary step toward higher education, Peggy said. But I won't be here long. Locke noticed how Peggy spoke so much like Sheldon, but he didn't think much of it. Haha, indeed. Maybe we'll graduate together, he chuckled, but didn't intend to continue chatting. After all, Peggy was just a 9-year-old girl. He found his usual seat and sat down. Unexpectedly, Peggy took the initiative and sat across from him. You like math? Yes, I've always believed that math can reveal all the truths in the world. That's true, but I understand that your math Olympiad team only took second place in the last intercollegiate math league. His high school collaborated with well-known universities in other states and held competitions in various fields, from football to baseball, from knowledge contests to math Olympiads. Each school contributed a portion of its funds to the prize pool. American private high schools, in their quest to attract outstanding students, always offered generous rewards to those who brought honor. For example, in the Math Olympiad, participants received $500, and the champion received several times that. Hey, we only had one problem behind us, they just answered it faster than we did. Sensing her disdain, Lip couldn't help but say, next time, we'll definitely beat them. We almost lost, Peggy said bluntly. Science tells us to respect facts, doesn't it? Come on, Lip. Seeing that Lip was about to lose his temper, Locke quickly stopped him. Locke hadn't expected Peggy's personality to be so similar to Sheldon's in some ways, a fact rarely highlighted in the plot. But on second thought, Locke wasn't surprised. After all, geniuses are naturally proud, and such an attitude towards ordinary people isn't particularly surprising. That's the result, but we'll definitely win the next competition, Locke said seriously. His intelligence statistic is now 16 points higher than last year, surpassing the average genius level and even exceeding the super genius threshold of 180, reaching 185. Over the past year, Locke has devoted more energy to math. He hasn't heard of any particularly outstanding freshmen from other universities this year. Compared to last year's performance, Locke is confident he can win the championship this year. Not only will he receive a generous prize, but crucially, it will also give him a high enough score on his applications to top private universities. Of course I believe it, because I'm planning to join the Mathematical Olympiad Interest Group, Peggy said, taking a sip of her milk. I just saw a problem on differential calculus of multivariate functions. This is just a show of force, Locke remembered. Peggy seemed to recognize him immediately, clearly coming prepared. What's so difficult about this question? Lip seemed to be annoyed by the other party's attitude and started to confront the other party. After all, he qualified for the Mathematical Olympiad because of his genius IQ. The questions at the beginning did not stump Lip, but then, as the discussion became more in-depth, Lip also felt the effort. Later, he gradually began to think hard. After glancing at Lip, who was thinking hard, Peggy smiled and looked at Locke, with a provocative look in her eyes. Ding, sudden task, a provocation from a genius girl. A genius girl seems to have underestimated your talent in mathematics. Please defeat the other party in the math contest and let the other party understand that the dignity of the Mathematical Olympiad captain cannot be challenged. The basic reward is 100 potential points, and additional rewards are given according to the completion of the task. Chapter 3, use this to test the counters? In his previous life, Locke's name was Li Shan, and his life had been truly unfortunate. His parents died young, and his relatives weren't very supportive. He managed to scrape by on his parents' inheritance until he graduated from high school. Being somewhat precocious, he knew that, given his circumstances, his only hope of changing his fate was education. 21st century China is no longer the same as it was 30 years ago. Class structures are becoming increasingly rigid, making self-made success difficult. Instead of trying his luck in the real world, he chose to study. His relatively good intelligence earned him admission to a top-tier university, though he endured considerable hardship, which forged his resilience. After college, He worked as a tutor and fast food waiter to earn tuition and living expenses while planning his future. After graduation, thanks to his strong professional skills and impressive qualifications, he became a mid-level manager at a major company within 5 years, purchasing a house and car in a first-tier city. At this point, he considered himself a successful life changer. But just as he was about to start enjoying life and find a girlfriend and get married, something unexpected happened. A car accident that brought him to the world he is today. Fortunately, despite being an orphan this time, he had access to a system cheat. He'd worked hard until now, and though he was still broke, thanks to the cheat, he'd already built a solid foundation in high school. He was determined to get a PhD from Columbia, Harvard, or Princeton. It would sound impressive and respectable. The name Locke was given by the orphanage's caretaker. His original name was Locke Felton. He changed his last name to Lee after leaving the orphanage at 16, as a tribute to his past life. Name: Locke Lee. Only player. Occupation: high school student. Strength: 124 agility, 132 constitution, 137 intelligence, 185 charisma, 149 lifespan, 16/89 potential points. 500 can be used to upgrade attributes, skills: driving, beginner, shooting, beginner, boxing, intermediate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, intermediate, Chinese, advanced, English, advanced, Spanish, advanced. Current task: regular task, opening of school mock exam. Base reward: 50 potential points. Emergent quest: provocation of the genius girl. Base reward: 100 potential points. Note: you are the player. Your life is yours. Whether you choose a dull or vibrant life is up to you. This system has been with Locke since he arrived in this world. After so long, he has long since adapted to its existence and mastered its usage. Basic attributes are the digitized form of one's own situation, with 100 points being the standard value for an adult human. Using potential points to improve one's attributes is Locke's greatest advantage. Just 100 potential points are enough to increase one attribute. Potential points are primarily earned through quests issued by the system, which are also related to Locke's profession. For example, if Locke is a student, the quests issued are all related to study, mostly exam-related. For example, this quest: as long as you pass the entrance exam, you will receive a base reward. The better your grades, the more potential points you will earn. Occasionally, there are triggered quests, such as this one. However, while the rewards for triggered quests are usually only 20 or 30 potential points, this one is particularly generous. With such a generous reward, Locke couldn't pass it up. He accepted it without hesitation. Peggy is truly a genius. She has a deep understanding of mathematics. Our Math Olympiad team has a dedicated classroom. Why don't we discuss it after school this afternoon? No problem, I'll be there. Lunch quickly ended, and Locke and Lip headed to the library as usual. It was clear that Peggy had come prepared, or perhaps Peggy was interested in defeating him, the Math Olympiad team captain, in math. The captaincy not only earned him a larger share of the prize money, but also was crucial for his college entrance exams. After all, as an orphan, he didn't have many special talents. Losing to Peggy would challenge his position as captain, something Locke couldn't accept. He needed to be prepared. In his memories of the Young Sheldon episodes, Peggy's IQ was comparable to Sheldon's, perhaps even slightly higher. Considering Sheldon's IQ of 187, Locke felt it was better to be safe. Fortunately, Locke had reserved his potential points. Originally planning to add them to his agility during the baseball game, he decided to put them into his intelligence now. This investment would surely pay off in the future. "Are you really going to compete with her?" Lip asked. "Otherwise, you should have figured out she did it on purpose," Locke said. "Of course, she recognized you right away, and even went out of her way to do that during dinner, but this girl is a tough one." Although he was annoyed with Peggy, Lip had learned from their previous battle that Peggy's IQ was high. Math was the most challenging subject, and there was no room for faking. "Don't worry, I'll win." Entering the library, Locke unhesitatingly invested his remaining 500 potential points into intelligence. A refreshing feeling washed over him, a familiar one. Since his rebirth, he had spent most of his potential points on improving his intelligence, otherwise, he wouldn't have reached his current level. When increasing his intelligence, the thresholds were 140 and 180 points. At 140, He could clearly feel a significant increase in his memory, calculations, and spatial perception. By 180, he had a near-perfect memory, capable of easily recalling not only memories from this life but also forgotten ones from previous lives. This was similar to Sheldon's high-definition visual map ability, which allowed him to visualize a starry sky and calculate its trajectory simply by imagining it. He also noticed a subtle improvement in his calculations, albeit a small one, but still able to compare it with his previous memories. For a prodigy who started high school at 9 and college at 11, even the smallest improvement was crucial. "Hey, Locke, I heard you were sitting with a 9-year-old girl at lunch. You're not attracted to girls that age, are you?" Mandy asked, having just returned to the classroom and not yet sat down. It wasn't surprising. Although he didn't have a girlfriend and most high school students didn't pay much attention to the mathematical Olympiad, he was a star figure at school thanks to his immense charm and the fact that he was the school's leading pitcher. Gossip about Locke spread quickly. The copper smelting was a serious topic in the United States, and even a rumor could cause serious trouble. He shook his head and explained, "She came to me on her own initiative. I heard she's a super genius recruited by the school, and she probably wants to challenge me in math." "Really? How is that going?" "I'll let her know in front of all the other Olympiad team members after school that it's too early for her to challenge me." "Oh, that sounds great." Mandy's eyes rolled, and a brilliant idea suddenly occurred to her. "Locke, I heard you've been tutoring middle school students lately. Their parents want them to pass their exams, and I happen to be good at that." "Really?" "Yes, so far, I've had high school students who couldn't pass multiple subjects get a B or B+ on their exams." "Wow, can I have you tutor me at my house? I love math, and I can pay you double," Mandy said without hesitation. Locke left the orphanage at the age of 16 and enrolled at this private high school in Dallas. The school offered Locke a full scholarship and a living allowance, but that was barely enough, and Locke needed to earn some extra income. Tutoring public high school students was his favorite thing. It wasn't because public high school students were easier to teach. In fact, in most cases, passing exams required starting from elementary school, but Locke had his own approach. These days, there were no such things as databases of test questions. To save time, many public high school teachers used exams that were similar to the previous years. With a quick fix of the previous year's exams, Locke could help them pass the exams, avoid repeating a grade, and earn tuition fees. In a way, it was a win-win situation. Private high schools were different, at least this approach didn't work. Mandy was a star at school, the centerpiece of the after-day queen group, but her grades were mediocre. Even though she was offering double pay, the time and effort required made it a poor investment. Most importantly, from the look in Mandy's eyes, Locke knew she wasn't interested in tutoring, but in his body. And was double pay just a way to test her leadership? Seeing Locke show no interest, Mandy said without hesitation, "Triple the salary." Mandy's father was wealthy, and she'd known from a young age that many things ultimately came down to money. If a job was rejected, it was likely because the money wasn't enough. For a moment, Locke was tempted and almost agreed, but he held back. "Sorry, I need to focus more on the math Olympiad and the baseball team, so I stopped tutoring a long time ago. Maybe we'll have another opportunity someday." 3 times isn't okay? Then 5 times, though rejected again, Mandy noticed Locke's momentary excitement and decisively raised the price. Money didn't matter to her, she couldn't spend all her own pocket money, and securing Locke was a matter of pride. Deal. Locke finally gave in to the wealthy man, he truly needed the money. Chapter 4 Win More. Compared to sports competitions, American private high schools place more emphasis on academic competitions. Locke's Math Olympiad team has its own activity room. Locke joined the Math Olympiad team 2 years ago when he first entered high school, and only became the team captain last year, leading the other team members to participate in the competition. He just lacked a little luck and lost by a single point, only to get the runner-up. This is already the school's best result in the past 10 years, and for this, Locke's treatment at school has been upgraded. In order to let him focus more on his studies, the principal provided him with a single dormitory with a bathroom. When he arrived at the activity room, he saw the math teacher in charge chatting with Peggy for a few words, and then quietly found a seat and sat down. When the activity time arrived and everyone arrived, the instructor said, "It seems everyone's in good spirits after a long summer. Let me introduce you to truly exceptional talent, Peggy." The teacher called Peggy to the front of the podium and said, "Now, introduce yourself, My name is Peggy Swanson, I'm 9 years old, and I'm thrilled to be here to delve into the mysteries of mathematics with you all. Peggy behaved well, but the sight of this 9-year-old girl set everyone ablaze with murmurs, for she was so young. Everyone here was top-tier students from private high schools, familiar with skipping grades, but entering high school at 9 was still somewhat beyond their comprehension. The teacher quickly hushed the discussion and took out the prepared test papers, explaining that the enjoyable summer vacation was over and that it was time for a test to entertain everyone. This wasn't surprising, as surprise exams were common in private schools. Everyone remained calm, and Locke happily accepted the new test. The reward of 20 potential points wasn't much, but it was something not to be missed. The teacher handed out the test papers, and all 23 students in the classroom began writing furiously. Done. Almost simultaneously, Locke and Peggy finished their papers first. The others weren't surprised by Locke's performance, but they hadn't expected a little girl like Peggy to be so much faster than them. This made them all work faster. The exam was over, and the teacher collected the papers. Just as he was about to discuss the upcoming schedule, he saw Peggy's hand raised. Peggy, what's up? This is my first time at school, and I want to see the math level of the Olympiad team. Sure enough, Peggy took the initiative and proposed the math duel with Locke. The tutor looked at Locke and, seeing him nod, said, "No problem. I think Locke will be thrilled to learn from such a genius." It looks like a tense confrontation, Lip yawned, looking at Locke and Peggy, sitting face to face at their desks. "I couldn't understand what they were saying 10 minutes ago," Nate sighed. "I was there 12 minutes ago," Lip looked at Peggy, who was still talking nonstop, and couldn't help but say, "I don't know where the school found such a freak. Maybe they want her to win a few more championships to please the donors." Nate shrugged. "Let's talk about something else. Yeah, you know. Locke actually agreed to go to Mandy's house this weekend. That Mandy, the queen of the night after tomorrow? Oh my god, has Locke finally gotten it?" Nate's face was full of envy and jealousy. "That's the queen of the night after tomorrow? I don't know. Locke said Mandy just asked him to help with math, and he's willing to pay 5 times his salary." 5 times? God, if Mandy would go out with me, I'd pay 10 times, Lip shrugged. Lip wasn't surprised that Locke finally fell for Mandy's sweet talk. He knew Locke's situation. With her multimillionaire father, Mandy really had no shortage of money. A few $100s for tutoring was nothing to her. "But you said, if Locke becomes Mandy's boyfriend, wouldn't that give us a chance to attend Mandy's party?" "That's a great idea. I'll tell Locke later that he shouldn't forget about us when such a great opportunity comes along. After all, we're a team." Lip's face once again plastered with a lewd smile, a thought that suddenly crossed his mind. Locke, focused on the little girl, was unaware that his teammates were already thinking about their outfits for the upcoming party. This was his first time playing against a super genius. Both sides gave their all, but in the end, Locke only managed to win by a very narrow margin. Locke breathed a sigh of relief after the match. His victory hadn't been easy. Peggy's father was a dentist, so he could buy her all kinds of cutting-edge books from a young age. Locke only had the opportunity to learn about such knowledge in the school library after entering high school. Locke had put a lot of effort into math during his 2 years in high school, and combined with his newly improved intelligence, he managed to pull off a narrow victory. It was a great match, Peggy. Locke stood up and extended his hand. "It seems the school's math Olympiad team is better than I expected." Peggy's face flashed with resentment, but she quickly calmed down and shook hands with Locke before leaving. The tutor then began to explain the upcoming study schedule, and Locke noticed that Peggy had been staring at him until it was over. "Little girls are trouble," Locke couldn't help but complain. "Maybe you won't think so in 10 years, Lip said slyly. "By then, they'll all be hot girls." Locke ignored Lip's daily fantasies. "If you have time to think about this, you might as well practice more. This year's Math Olympiad is only a little over 2 months away. Don't be such a dampener, brother. Why don't you tell everyone about Mandy asking me out on a date? It's not a date. She just wants me to tutor her in math." "Do you really think so?" Lip said. "That's Mandy. Of course I know what's going on, but I've said before, I don't plan on dating in high school." Locke knew what these horny bunnies were thinking, and even Mandy's thoughts were not out of his expectation. To be honest, the 5-fold salary was still very attractive, and it made him change his original idea since he lacked sufficient funds. Everyone knows that the first million is the hardest to earn, and Locke couldn't refuse the conditions proposed by Mandy. Locke was not thinking about the tuition fees now. Peggy put a lot of pressure on him. Looking at her eyes when she left, Locke knew that things were not over yet. If there was a chance next time, she would definitely challenge him again. Faced with the challenge of a super genius, Locke had to deal with it carefully. In his previous life, he was just a mediocre little man. His experience seemed smooth, but in fact, he encountered many setbacks. In this life, he had the cheat, and he wanted to win more. Chapter 5 Invitation. After finishing his Olympiad group study session, Locke, clutching his library books, returned to his assigned single-bedroom dorm. The school environment was pleasant, with excellent security, transportation, leisure facilities, and shopping options. After entering high school at 16, Locke chose to live on campus, leaving the orphanage behind. The dormitory resembled a one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment, measuring approximately 30 square meters, more than adequate for Locke's current needs. After washing, changing, and hanging up his uniform, Locke sat down and retrieved a book. Carefully scrutinizing the cover, he saw a modern print titled Introduction to Judo. He flipped open the cover and studied it for about 5 or 6 seconds before a translucent dialog box appeared before Locke's eyes, asking him whether he wanted to learn the skill, Judo. Yes, I've learned martial arts, Judo. My current level is beginner. My proficiency will increase with each skill level. He then activated the martial arts, Judo skill, and countless images suddenly flooded his mind. Numerous images flashed before his eyes, and his hands involuntarily began to stir. Closing his eyes for a moment, Locke carefully reviewed the system prompts and stat panel, noticing no change in his base stats. This didn't come as a surprise. When he first learned boxing, he'd received a bonus of +1 to both strength and constitution. Upon reaching the intermediate level, the bonus doubled, along with an additional charisma boost. However, when he learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he'd only gained 2 points of agility and 1 point of charisma upon reaching the intermediate level. This might be a system mechanism to prevent players from using duplicate skills to boost their stats. He'd invested most of his previously earned potential points into intelligence, relying mostly on training and skill-based stat increases for other stats. Now that his intelligence was sufficient for the time being, Locke planned to use his skills to improve his physical stats. He pulled out his second book, Introduction to Muay Thai. This time, the dozen or so books he'd prepared were all related to combat. Unlike math and physics, which the system didn't recognize, and which he'd relied on his own scientific studies, combat techniques were clearly something the system could recognize. Most of these were printed materials. Without a teacher, learning the relevant techniques from these introductory books alone would be nearly impossible for an average person. However, the system allowed Locke to quickly master a vast array of combat techniques. After reading 6 or 7 books, the system suddenly prompted, "We've detected that the player possesses multiple combat skills. Do you want to merge these skills? Is that even possible?" Locke was slightly taken aback. This system seemed quite intelligent, allowing skills of the same type to be merged. He immediately agreed, and the system immediately prompted, "Generate the skill Mixed Martial Arts, Elementary, adding 1 to Strength, Agility, Constitution, and Charisma." Wow, what an unexpected gain! Locke smiled as he finished reading the remaining books, integrating the thick stack into his mixed martial arts. Finally, recalling the various movements in his mind, he stood up and began punching the punching bag hanging in the middle of the dormitory. After a few hits, he received another prompt, Mixed Martial Arts Experience +1. Rejoicing, Locke punched and kicked the bag again, vigorous and vigorous. Seeing another experience increase, he felt a slight joy. He practiced intently, and soon the system displayed prompts, Mixed Martial Arts Experience +1, Mixed Martial Arts Experience +3, Mixed Martial Arts Experience +1. The system's initial experience gain was quite rapid. After a few hours, Locke's mixed martial arts skills had reached intermediate, and he now had access to the special ability Meditation Battle, which gave him +4 to Strength, Agility, and Constitution, and +5 to Charisma. Clearly, mixed martial arts provided greater and more comprehensive stat gains than other fighting skills. However, according to the pattern of skill advancement, reaching intermediate was easy, but advancing to advanced was not so simple. Previously, a casual punch on the sandbag would earn 1 experience point, but now it might take 5 or 6 minutes of serious work to achieve the same effect. Coupled with the doubling of the experience required to level up, Advancing to advance in mixed martial arts in such a short period of time would be difficult. What interested him now was the additional meditation battle. But before Locke could even try, the phone in his dorm rang. The caller was the principal. "Locke, I think you've met our new genius." "Yes, Peggy made a deep impression on me. Geniuses like her are rare. It seems you're getting along well. Peggy's parents heard about you and want to invite you to their house." "Guest?" "Yes, the Swansons heard you've surpassed Peggy in math, so they'd like to invite you to dinner tonight." "Can I refuse?" Locke felt like he was in trouble. "You're a brilliant child, Locke. A talented girl like Peggy is very important to our school." American public high schools practice a joyful education, while elite education targets two types of people: children from middle-class and above families, and truly talented people from the lower classes, who serve as a fresh blood to replenish the elite class. The high quality of private high schools is primarily supported by donations and high tuition fees. Whether it's to attract large donations or convince parents to send their children to their school, the most important factor is the school's academic performance and reputation. The arrival of a talented student would benefit both of these factors and even serve as publicity, raising the school's profile. Therefore, Peggy was now the school's darling. "Okay, I'll go." Locke, who still relied on scholarships and grants for tuition and living expenses, naturally didn't want to leave a bad impression on the school over such a small matter. "Great, is tomorrow evening okay?" "The Swansons' address is." "Do you want me to go with you?" "No, but if possible, I might be able to give Mr. Swanson a ride." Locke reviewed the map. Their home wasn't close to the school. In the United States, drivers can get a driver's license at 16, and although Locke had a license, he didn't have a car. "No problem. I think the Swansons would be happy to talk to you," the principal said with a smile. "You and Peggy are both valuable assets to our school." After school that afternoon, Peggy was picked up by her mother, Linda. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Swanson." "Nothing, just call me Linda." Perhaps because of Locke's extraordinary charm, Linda seemed to have a good impression of Locke and was very enthusiastic. "I heard about your school life. The teachers all said you were a genius." "That's nothing. Not even as good as Peggy. When I was her age, I was still attending elementary school." "Oh, but I heard from Peggy that the Bell you were discussing with her, it's Bell's inequality, a powerful mathematical inequality proposed by Bell in 1964. Under the dual assumptions of locality and reality, these words reminded Linda of Peggy's usual words. Fortunately, she was used to Peggy saying these things every day and quickly filtered out these words that she didn't understand at all. "So, Locke, where are you from?" "I don't know. I grew up in the Gayville orphanage." "I'm sorry." Linda thought she had guessed why Locke had such a high IQ but didn't skip a grade like her daughter. "It's nothing. The teachers at the orphanage are very kind to me, and I like the dinner Miss Heather makes." Locke gave his usual response. Life in the orphanage wasn't exactly easy. While the United States had strict regulations for the protection of minors, there were still plenty of incidents. His experience was relatively good. At most, the administrators would spank and scold any child they disliked, and occasionally punish him by depriving him of dinner. Fortunately, Locke was mature and able to please the administrators. Thanks to the system, he avoided punishment and bullying from other children his age. As for being singled out by other children as eccentric, a mature person wouldn't care. It was truly difficult for a reborn person to connect with these children. Chapter 6, Love Will Only Delay Study Time. Arriving at Peggy's house, her father, Barry, was still at get-off work. Linda went to prepare dinner and asked Peggy to show Locke around. "This is my room," Peggy said, leading Locke to her room, which was decorated in a very girly way. Locke's attention quickly focused on a nearby bookshelf. It was filled with mostly bulky physics and math books, several of which Locke had never seen before in school. "It seems you have a lot of good books." "Yes, my mom bought them all for me," Peggy said. "Doesn't your mom buy books with you? I'm an orphan, and there's no one out there who'd spend $68 buying me a book as a gift." "Okay, but sometimes I wonder if I were an orphan, I wouldn't have anyone watching over me all day." "Believe me, it wouldn't be a pleasant experience," Locke said. "Can I take a look at these books? How about a game of chess?" Peggy pulled a chess set from a nearby drawer. "It's up to you, host. But when I get back, could I borrow a few of your books?" "Of course, I've already read them, and they're all here." Peggy pointed to her head. "Thank you, I'll return them shortly." Locke and Peggy set up their chess sets, and Peggy gestured, "Then you go first." "No problem." Peggy picked up the chess pieces. By the way, were your opponents at the Mathematical Olympiad strong last year? Not really, but at least a little worse than you. Then why did you lose? Mainly because I didn't have enough time to prepare, and I lacked a bit of luck. Are you saying you're spending all your time dating girls? Peggy said. I heard you're dating a girl named Mandy right now. Not a date, just math tutoring for her. Tutoring makes good money, and I'm an orphan, so I have to make my own money, but that's not what I heard discussed at school. Everyone knows it. High school. Locke noticed that Peggy seemed to be trying to distract him through chatting, so he could gain an advantage in the game, but he didn't care. After all, it was just a private chess game. Unexpectedly, the system suddenly popped up again at this moment. Our genius little girl seems unconvinced by her last defeat and wants to get even. How can failure be tolerated in a life with this system, even though you've already taken second place once? Please give your all to win and let her know that setbacks are inevitable in life. The base reward is 50 potential points. The better the victory, the greater the bonus. Seeing this task, Locke, who had been casually preparing for it, suddenly perked up. He didn't want to miss out on any opportunity to earn potential points. He hadn't expected Peggy to give him 100 potential points yesterday, and he'd get another one today. Could it be because she's a plot character? This seemed like a good opportunity to try to get in touch with Sheldon. But now, he still had to complete this task. Chess is still a very demanding game, and Locke wouldn't be so easy to win. Check, Peggy said happily. Let's play another game. Locke played casually at first. Their IQs were already comparable, and after losing the initiative, even when he got serious, Locke had no choice but to admit defeat. The mission must be completed, so he said, best of 3 games, no problem. Peggy, who had just won a game, planned to press on. 1. Checkmate. Locke, who had finally won the next 2 games, rubbed his temples. These 2 games had consumed countless brain cells. Why not 2 more? Now it was Peggy's turn to refuse to admit defeat. Just as she said this, there was a knock on the door, and she had no choice but to stand up and open it. Hello, you must be Locke. Opening the door, she saw a middle-aged man. I'm Barry, Peggy's father. Hello, Mr. Swanson, just call me Barry. Barry emphasized and looked around the room. Are you playing chess? Yes, Peggy gave me a warning at the beginning, Locke said with a smile. I know. Less than an hour after I taught her how to play chess, I knew. Barry patted Locke's shoulders sympathetically. I hope I didn't disturb you. Linda said dinner will be almost ready. I can't wait to try Ms. Linda's cooking. Locke agreed with a smile and quickly completed the task. He only managed to win the next 2 games, especially the third. If Locke hadn't also influenced Peggy with his words, the outcome might have been uncertain. Having acquired the potential points, Locke glanced at Peggy and decided he needed to improve his intelligence a bit more to be safe. Otherwise, he might not be able to successfully complete a similar task next time. At the Swanson family dinner, in addition to the Swansons and Peggy, Peggy's sister, Erica, was also present. Barry said from the head table as the 5 of them sat around the table. We're delighted to have Peggy's classmate, Locke, join us for our family dinner today. It's my honor, Mr. Barry, Locke said with a smile. Well, let me introduce you. You already know Linda and Peggy. This is my eldest daughter, Erica. Hello, nice to meet you. Locke smiled and extended his hand. Hi. Erica immediately grabbed Locke's hand, staring intently at him with a sweet smile. Do you have a girlfriend, Erica? Linda glared at Erica. Erica reluctantly released Locke's hand, but continued to stare at him. Locke couldn't help but complain about his charisma again. This damn system of his. Basic and intermediate skills were fine, but upgrading them was incredibly difficult. The problem was that the attribute points added after skill upgrades were incredibly poor. He didn't want his charisma to be too high, but it was increasing so quickly because every skill upgrade would also increase his charisma. If this continued, he would be doomed to romance. His charisma now made it easy to win the favor of strangers. High school girls were instantly attracted to him, and they were all kinds of flirtatious, making overt and subtle advances. If he wanted, going to clubs and bars every night and being his bride every night would be no problem. Fortunately, if the stranger were male, the high charm value wouldn't have been as effective. It was basically just a pleasant-looking level, and there was no chance of homosexuality. Otherwise, he would have been tempted to switch systems. I'm sorry, Locke, it's okay, Ms. Linda. I'm used to Erica's questions. Locke was very calm. I don't have a girlfriend, and I don't plan to get one. At least not at this stage. Why? Erica couldn't help but ask loudly. Being in love would only delay my studies. Chapter 7 Science is fascinating. Dinner began with a few awkward moments. Barry said, "That's a good idea. Studying comes first." Peggy followed up, "Dating in high school does significantly reduce your academic efficiency." "You made the right choice." Erica couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. What good was studying? But then, seeing Locke's righteous expression, she felt she should forgive him. Locke's words had simply been a way of making his stance clear. Mature and thoughtful, he quickly changed the subject, offering subtle compliments to Barry and Linda. They quickly found Locke comfortable, not only in appearance but also in his maturity, stability, and sincerity. Linda even repeatedly urged Locke to look after 9-year-old Peggy at school. "It's an honor to study with such a genius," Locke said with a smile. "Peggy's perspectives have been quite inspiring to me in so many ways." "That's great. I'm glad to see you two get along so well." Barry and Linda were delighted with Locke's words, which was the main reason they wanted to invite him to dinner. Although Peggy was a genius, she was only 9 years old, and they were worried about her being bullied in high school. Yesterday after school, Linda heard Peggy mention Locke. Knowing Locke was also a genius, she wanted to see Locke and ask him to look after Peggy if needed. Locke had no reason to refuse. Studying with a genius would greatly improve learning efficiency, not to mention that he suspected Peggy might trigger more missions. In Locke's eyes, Peggy was a glittering goldmine of potential. Both parties achieved their goals, and both were delighted. It's true that the adult world is all about social etiquette. The next day, after class, Locke and Lip headed to the cafeteria as usual when they ran into Peggy. Locke nodded, intending to just say hello, but the girl followed them all the way to the cafeteria. After they had their food, she brought Linda's lunch and sat across from them. "Why are you sitting here again?" Lip said in a stern tone, and Locke could tell he was a little intimidated by Peggy. After all, the mathematical Olympiad competition between Peggy and Locke the previous day had made Lip realize the gap in their knowledge. "I remember someone promised my mom yesterday they'd take good care of me at school." Peggy ignored Lip and just looked at Locke. Locke felt a slight toothache. Would she have to eat lunch with him every day? If so, who knew what kind of gossip would spread around the school? His heart ached, but he couldn't just yell at the little girl. He could only say, "Don't worry. Linda and Barry are my friends too. I've promised them they'd take care of you. You can ask me anything you need at school." "Great. I've decided to officially join the Math Olympiad team. You should be able to give me some advice, right?" "Of course. Come to the activity room after school this afternoon, and I'll prepare the admission form for you." "It's nice to study math with you," Peggy said, seemingly delighted. Locke wasn't sure if she was just pretending, but he figured Peggy was only 9 years old, so she probably wouldn't have any deep plans. Besides, she was a real talent, so he decided to get along with her. After lunch, after Peggy left, Lip couldn't help but ask, "You're not really planning on having her join us, are you?" Students all had their own little cliques, usually sitting together at lunch, what they call lunch cliques in the US. Locke often sat with Lip at lunch. And sometimes people from the Math Olympiad group would join them, but Lip absolutely refused to let a little girl join them. He said it would make his chances of getting a date at school plummet, even though, so far, he'd never gotten a date with a girl in his high school career. "I can't help it. The principal told me she's a valuable asset to the school, and his parents asked me to help take care of her." Locke patted Lip's shoulder. "Don't worry, she's just a little girl. She's no ordinary girl. From what I've heard, the school not only gave her scholarships and grants to get her in, but also promised her a bonus when she's ready to go to college, so you see, the school values her very highly. Just don't mess with her. Girls your age are always trouble, and it seems she's got her eyes on you." Locke didn't say much. Being close to Peggy was indeed a challenge to his high school plans, but he was now considering how to use Peggy to trigger more tasks. As long as the rewards were high, those troubles wouldn't be a problem. Does anyone have an answer to this question? In chemistry class, the teacher looked around at the students and began to ask questions. Seeing Locke raise his hand first, he pointed at him and smiled slightly. "Locke, you tell me." "Okay, this question is very simple. It just involves considering the chemical properties," Locke spoke eloquently. "In the United States, people value showing off one's talents, but there's no such thing as modesty. Regular grades also play a significant role in college entrance exams, and within those grades, Classroom performance is directly reflected in the teacher's grading. In a corner of the classroom, Mandy, a white girl with a blonde ponytail and a delicate, innocent face, bit her lip, her eyes watering as she watched Locke speak. As the teacher applauded, the girl shuddered, slumped over on her desk, and murmured breathlessly, "Science is so fascinating. I can't wait for the weekend." "Hi, Locke," Mandy said after class, seeing Locke packing his bag. "Hello," Locke glanced at the blushing Mandy. "What's up, Locke? Have you decided on your date for the homecoming dance?" Homecoming, along with the annual graduation dance, are arguably the most important dances for American students. To attend the dance, boys would prepare formal attire, and girls would meticulously prepare gowns. Meanwhile, those seeking admission had to pay tens of yuan for tickets. Those with money would contact private tailors early on, while many women with limited assets would prepare months in advance, taking on part-time jobs to finance tickets and dress rentals, all in the name of a stunning appearance. To compete for the title of prom king and queen, even those with a modicum of fame at school would resort to schemes to boost their reputations or suppress their opponents. Some talented and wealthy contestants resorted to outright gifts to solicit votes, as the king and queen were chosen by a vote of all attending students, akin to a smaller version of American campaigning. "Not yet, how about joining me?" Mandy said with a sweet smile. "I don't have a partner either, so please," she bowed coquettishly, imploring him. A flash of white suddenly blossomed before Locke's eyes, captivating him for a few seconds. Mandy, who had been keeping an eye on Locke, smiled even more sweetly, but then she heard Locke say, "Actually, I'm not planning on going to the homecoming dance." "Why?" Mandy's face was filled with disappointment, but she remained undeterred. "If you're worried, I can pay for your tickets and dress. I don't need the money for them, but I have homework to do." Locke waved his notebook, which was filled with numbers and mathematical formulas, making Mandy, a math slacker, feel dizzy at first glance. "Homecoming is a big deal. I can rent a Cadillac, and we'll definitely be king and queen," Mandy said. "That sounds great, but it won't make me rich." "Does that mean anything?" "It's just homework," Locke smiled without saying anything. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, It Took Less Than a Second to Die. Of course, Locke's notebook wasn't filled with math homework, it was his own lottery research, specifically designed to win the prize. The United States boasts numerous influential lotteries, such as Powerball and Mega Millions. However, these lottery tickets are widely distributed, designed by specialized personnel, and even employ numerous mathematical experts as consultants. Working alone, Locke found it difficult to find loopholes in these lottery systems. However, American lotteries are incredibly popular and diverse, with each state having its own smaller lottery. These games vary widely, and not all are logically sound. New lotteries, in particular, have novel gameplay, unlike the long-established, proven methods of major lotteries. This makes the chances of discovering loopholes through mathematical analysis much higher. By studying patterns and performing mathematical calculations, one could potentially raise the theoretical winning rate from a mere 1 in 10 million to 1 in 1,000, significantly increasing the chances of winning. Then, based on the results, one could buy up thousands of tickets, theoretically guaranteeing a jackpot. There are even mathematicians who specialize in this practice, and it's even made headlines. Even if successful, it's considered legal income, but spreading the word would likely put them on the blacklist of lottery issuers. Of course, one must be wary of cheating by publishers, such as using delayed recordings to announce the results. If such behind-the-scenes cheating were to occur, even the most accurate mathematical calculations would be useless. Locke, with his high IQ and mathematical proficiency, had the idea of using mathematical calculations after receiving a free lottery ticket at a convenience store. His notebook was filled with densely packed data, representing his collection of lottery information and mathematical calculations. He had already thoroughly researched a lottery that had been launched less than a year earlier. If he simply purchased a planned 3,200 tickets, his chances of winning would be 100%. He was currently doing a final recalculation to ensure his calculations were correct, a step that required caution, as his entire savings only allowed for one attempt. As for the homecoming dance, it certainly held a strong allure for students his age. Peggy even asked him about it during lunch. "I don't think you'll ever find a date," Lip said to Peggy with a grin. "No one wants a 9-year-old girl as their date, so someone like you can find a date," Peggy replied calmly, causing Lip to instantly put on a mask of pain. "It's nothing to lose. It's just a dance," Locke said, mentally simulating his lottery predictions. "I just had things to do, so I didn't even want to go to the homecoming dance." His exceptional intelligence allowed him to multitask with ease. "I don't know why you turned down Mandy's invitation," Lip said. "You're ruining my plans." "Your plans have never worked," Locke said without hesitation. "If you want to pick up girls, you'd better clean up your image and control the way you look at girls. Listen to the advice, eat your fill, and see." Kevin has already found a date for the dance. Kevin was also a member of the mathematical Olympiad team, and according to the students, he was a nerd like Lip. This title is unwelcome in American high schools, a nickname associated with unusual behavior. The chances of landing a girl are practically zero. But he's a man of action. He heeded Locke's advice, and with his own perseverance, his ability to say nice things improved despite his failures. He finally found his partner and became the envy of Lip. Lip, on the other hand, was usually quite talkative, but often fumbled with girls. His image wasn't up to par, and he remained single. "Did you reject Mandy because you found a date?" Ignoring Lip, Peggy looked at Locke. "I'm not planning on going to the homecoming dance. Maybe I'll try someday, but I'm so busy right now. My research is at a critical juncture, and I don't have the time for that, but Mandy's graduating next year. If I miss this opportunity, I'll never get the chance to invite her to the homecoming dance," Lip continued. "Don't worry, there's always a shortage of beautiful young women on high school campuses. There will be opportunities in the future," Locke said. "But you've perfectly avoided all those opportunities," Lip said, feeling a little dejected. Ignoring Lip, Locke's priority now was completing the lottery calculation review to ensure it was foolproof. The homecoming dance remained unchanged despite Locke's absence, and was just as lively as any other. However, when Locke went to Mandy's house the next weekend for tutoring, she was still awake. Locke didn't care. After all, the time had begun counting from the moment he arrived, and Mandy's tuition was essential, and Mandy's family didn't need the money. Mandy's tuition had covered the final gap in his funds needed to buy the lottery tickets, and he couldn't wait to give it a try. Time passed, and after school, he bought the lottery tickets he needed according to his calculations. He returned to his dorm and opened the system panel, intending to try out a meditation battle that had appeared earlier. This was a form of mental training, essentially practicing meditation and mentally training, imitating a duel with an opponent in the mind to improve one's ability to respond in real combat. This was a special ability that had emerged after he had combined multiple fighting techniques into a mixed martial arts system. However, he had previously put it aside because he needed to complete the lottery calculations, so now was the time to give it a try. He immediately initiated a meditation battle, and soon his vision went black, as if his soul had left his body. When he regained sight, he found himself in the center of a dilapidated village, surrounded by a faint mist and a chilling wind. Looking down, he realized his clothing hadn't changed. He moved a bit, finding it looked just like in real life. Just then, a man in a tight suit slowly emerged from the mist and stood not far in front of him. At the same moment, a message popped up in Locke's mind: Muay Thai fighter, intermediate level. Clearly, this opponent was tailored to Locke's skill level, not some exaggerated grandmaster. Locke carefully took a stance. The opposing fighter, silent, also adopted a classic Muay Thai stance, his eyes fixed on Locke, a cold, bloody gaze. A chilling wind swept past, and the two men slowly approached. Locke stared intently at the other, mentally deciding how to respond. In their first official fight, Locke hadn't intended to initiate the attack. He was just planning to see his opponent's movements first, then devise a countermeasure, when he suddenly vanished, startling him. However, his mixed martial arts memories quickly revealed that the opponent had employed a unique gait, moving swiftly into his blind spot before dashing towards him. The entire process seemed like teleportation, leaving Locke momentarily unable to react. In such a short time, Locke had no idea how to respond, and couldn't even quickly determine his opponent's position. He could only tentatively throw a punch in one direction, hoping for luck. The next moment, he felt a pain in his neck, followed by the crisp sound of bone snapping. The last image in his mind was of the opponent retreating, distanced himself, and then withdrawing his stance with a grim expression. His vision went black, and as he regained consciousness, Locke found himself back in the dormitory. He sat there stunned for a long moment, his face etched with embarrassment. Even accounting for the cautious approach, from the moment the opponent launched his attack, he hadn't lasted a single second before he was killed. After a short fight, Locke realized that there was a clear gap between his eyesight, reaction speed, skills and even psychological quality during the fight and his opponents, and he was no different from a sandbag in a fight. Chapter 9, King Leads King. System skill upgrades allowed Locke to quickly grasp combat techniques, but applying them required physical coordination and, more importantly, practical experience. After all, this wasn't a game where mastery was guaranteed. In reality, even acquired skills required physical coordination and the ability to discern how to use them. There was also the mental fortitude. Just now, it wasn't just his rusty skills. Facing the enemy's attacks, Locke, who had previously only followed routines, was visibly flustered, his movements becoming stiff. He didn't assess his opponent's position and launched a reckless attack, exposing a more obvious vulnerability and instantly being struck in the vitals. Clearly, many skills aren't simply about leveling them up. Reality isn't a game, it requires more practice and real-world experience, and he still had a long way to go. Thinking of this, Locke couldn't help but rub his neck again. Although he knew meditative combat wouldn't affect his health, the pain from that momentary injury still lingered. After recovering, Locke gathered his composure and decided to try again, feeling he couldn't afford to be humiliated and instantly defeated like that. He continued this practice several times until he felt dizzy and exhausted. He closed his eyes and rested, recovering from the mental strain. Once he'd recovered somewhat, Locke stopped. He glanced at the system panel and noticed his MMA experience had increased significantly, much faster than simply punching a sandbag. The results were impressive, but the mental strain was considerable, leaving Locke feeling a bit drowsy. He knew it was a sign of mental exhaustion. For the next few days, Locke continued his obsession with meditation battles, stopping only when he felt mentally exhausted. After experimenting, he discovered that meditation battles not only improved his MMA skills but also allowed him to train other combat skills, such as shooting. They say happy Americans shoot every day, but Locke still hadn't touched a real gun. He'd only acquired his intermediate shooting skills by reading shooting books and using a toy gun. It was a bit funny, but gaining skills was so easy at first. However, during meditation battles, Locke was often shot in the head before his opponent even saw him. The alarm went off at 5 in the morning. Locke groaned, barely managing to suppress the urge to smash it, and sat up. Studying is hard, a pain many people refuse to endure. Life is also hard, but many others tolerate it. It's simply laziness. Studying requires you to actively endure this pain, while the pain of life is something you have no choice but to passively endure. Locke understood this principle, and so he worked hard to overcome his laziness and actively endure the pain of studying. Fortunately, his IQ has improved enough now that he can basically learn without having to practice. This aspect actually brings a greater sense of accomplishment, but physical training is what needs to be strengthened. With a convenient method of meditation combat, it's time to start honing various combat skills. After all, the US is far behind the East in terms of security, so practicing more skills won't hurt. All of this takes a considerable amount of time, especially meditation combat. After using it a few times, you need to take a deep sleep to recover. 15 minutes of deep sleep can restore most of your mental and physical strength. Evening study time had been moved to the morning, and Locke could often be seen on the school grounds at night. After a good workout, they would engage in a meditation session, taking turns. After folding the bedding with some difficulty and putting it back in the closet, Locke felt a sharp pain in his thighs, arms, wrists, fingers, and neck, probably the after effects of yesterday's overexertion. He trudged to the bathroom with a crab-like gait, washed up, and then returned to his desk to begin studying. When it was almost time, Locke shouldered his backpack and headed to the academic building, where he first visited the college admissions counselor's office. In the United States, preparations for college begin the moment one enters college. Locke hadn't yet decided on a specific university, but he had already determined the requirements for admission. Given Locke's circumstances, excellent academic performance was a prerequisite for admission to a top-tier university, especially one in the U.S. However, SAT scores are only one of many criteria. There are only so many top universities, and talented individuals are vying for limited spots. To stand out from the crowd of outstanding applicants, other aspects must be considered comprehensively. For example, participation in clubs in American high schools can demonstrate organizational and leadership skills, or possess unique talents. Leadership is also highly valued by these universities, requiring students to join clubs and serve as leaders in these clubs, leading their activities. These unique talents encompass a wide range of areas, primarily sports and the arts. Sports include football, basketball, baseball, and other sports that demonstrate your comprehensive abilities. Arts, such as music, painting, or even niche sports like horseback riding and sailing, are also important criteria. In a previous life, Locke saw news reports about students with average grades who gained admission to top universities thanks to their horseback riding skills. If admission relies solely on academic performance, then students must be exceptionally good, dazzlingly so, such as winning medals in prestigious science competitions. Locke must have been aiming for a top university, otherwise his time travel would have been in vain. As soon as he entered high school, he joined the Math Olympiad team and the baseball club, all in preparation for college. His lottery predictions were quite successful, and after deducting the hefty taxes, he ultimately received over $280,000 in prize money, a staggering sum in those days. He kept a small portion and invested the rest in the stock market, dividing the money into two parts. One was invested in stocks of promising companies that Locke had in mind, a long-term fixed investment. The other was for short-term investments, aiming to capitalize on opportunities that Locke had recalled from his previous life. After receiving the money, Locke's first thought was to try again, but he quickly dismissed the idea because consecutive wins would be too conspicuous. One could explain it as luck, but consecutive wins would undoubtedly lead to an investigation by the lottery's publisher, and Locke's predictions would likely be exposed, leading to significant trouble. For now, the money was sufficient. Even if he tried again, he couldn't choose the same lottery again. That would require a fresh round of calculations, and all the work would have to be done all over again. The only thing that bothered Locke was that the internet wasn't well developed at the time, and investing in stocks required contacting a stockbroker over the phone, which was a bit slow. Regardless, with this little capital, Locke gradually began to relax, no longer pushing himself as hard as before. "I heard this year's mathematical Olympiad is being held in New York," Peggy said in the cafeteria at lunch. "My mom is debating whether to go with me. She's worried I won't be able to adapt." "Why worry? The school will make all the arrangements." "The last time I was at your house, Barry complained about how little Linda cared about him. Why not take this opportunity to give them a trip?" "That's a good idea," Peggy agreed. She occasionally wanted to break free from her parents' control. "I'll talk to Mom when I get home. By the way, can you help me persuade her?" "Why?" "Because my parents think you're trustworthy. If you help, my chances of persuading them will go much better, so this is my job." "That's right," Peggy said to Locke with a smile. "The mathematical Olympiad is drawing near. Winning not only earns extra credits but also a prize. With Paige joining, the prize money will increase even further. Because female mathematical prodigies are rare, and with a gradual rise of gender equality in the United States, many competition organizers have doubled the prize money if a female contestant is among the competitors. Of course, to prevent exploitation, champions often let bronze players, randomly filing in the gaps with women, and other rules are in place. During the preliminaries, there's a stage called the death elimination, where both teams can nominate a member of the opposing team. Mathematics doesn't tolerate cheating. After a period of competition, both teams must have a rough idea of the other team's skill. Once they reach this stage, they essentially select their opponent's weakest link. At this point, a bronze player can't possibly become a champion. Paige's addition perfectly fills the gap left by the team's lack of female members. Moreover, Paige is a champion herself. With champions leading champions, and with Locke himself, there's no way he can lose. Chapter 10. Leave before I lose my angry. Time slowly drifted towards November 1989, and the preliminary rounds began one after another. Locke's mathematical Olympiad team, with Peggy, a gifted student, and Locke, a skilled player, swept the competition, easily qualifying for the finals. In early December, the group traveled to New York for the finals. It was a big undertaking. If they could take first place, they would receive 500 potential points. Locke was enthusiastic about the prospect. Last year's narrow loss by a single point had left him frustrated for a long time. "Have you decided on something?" Peggy glanced at the magazine Locke was holding on the plane. "I don't think there's anything in particular I'd like to see. Big cities are just a bunch of tall buildings." Frankly, Locke wasn't particularly interested in the attractions described. "Are there any you're interested in? I've got it all figured out. I have a few days off from the competition, so I'm definitely going to have a blast," Peggy said excitedly. "Didn't you ever go out during the holidays? My dad's a dentist, and he's always busy during the holidays. Mom did take me to a nearby city, but that was New York. It's number 2 on my list of places to visit, so where's number 1? Hawaii. I heard the scenery there is really beautiful," Peggy said. "Maybe when I graduate from high school, I can ask my parents to take me there, but I don't know if Dad has the time." Locke wasn't surprised. Not every American family can travel the world during their holidays. That only happens in movies. Many Americans, like most people in the East, start working and want to travel, but they're short on money. They can't afford to go anywhere, so they can only wander around the area. By the time they've saved a little, most have families. But due to various family circumstances, they either lack the time to care for the elderly and children, or they don't have enough money to spend. Fortunately, the United States has a small population and abundant natural beauty. Many middle-class people have time to go fishing and hunting in the countryside, which is a good way to relax. The opportunity to fly to other cities during the holidays is rare, perhaps only once every few years. The flight was very fast, and by the time the plane arrived, it felt like no time had passed. We hurried to our hotel. The competition wasn't just for the mathematical Olympiad, but also for finalists from other competitions. The school had rented a floor in a high-end New York hotel. There was no need to worry about food and accommodation. The school had already allocated the budget. As a private high school, they are quite generous when it comes to activities that enhance their reputation. After lunch at the hotel, the team leader and several students met together and drove to the competition's destination. Many of the competition's events were held at North Shore High School in New York City, a well-established and established public high school. Their teams rarely make it to the finals of the quiz competition, but their rugby and soccer teams are regular winners. The most impressive thing about this place was the stadium, which looked large enough to host even a decent mid-sized event. Seeing the stadium, Lip couldn't help but sigh. "Such a large stadium, much larger than our schools. I'm so envious." "What's there to envy? They're developing in different directions," Locke shrugged. This was actually a typical American trait. Public high schools mostly practice a joyful education system. Why study? Just work together to improve your physical fitness. Private high schools might also prioritize physical education, but the intensity is far less than the academic focus. Why do we exercise? Just work together to improve our IQ. The competition venue is in the North Shore High School auditorium. Although the competition was in 5 days, the final preparations would continue after arriving. This time, the coach was confident. In addition to last year's ace Locke, they also had the superstar Paige. They should have no problem securing the championship, but he felt they still had to be cautious. With last-minute preparation, they began to work on 1, 2, and even 3 tests that were practically beyond the university math syllabus. Fortunately, the teacher knew that most students of this age were restless and, in New York, they definitely want to relax, so they couldn't completely suppress it. So, they gave the afternoon free time. At this time, universities from all over the country would send people to see if there were any promising youngsters among the top 8 players in the Silly Power competition, hoping to recruit them to their schools. This was a common occurrence. Since Linda hadn't come along, Peggy dragged a somewhat reluctant Locke out onto the streets of New York, enthusiastically beginning their planned itinerary. Arriving at a street corner, Locke spotted a celebrity from afar entering a roadside shop. Nicolas Cage, at 25, was still just an art house film star. As the center of film and television production in the eastern United States, encountering celebrities wasn't uncommon. However, what surprised Locke was that the man he'd just seen looked 30 years old, with a weathered look, and it didn't look like he was filming a movie. "I see an interesting shop," Locke said, curiously pointing to the one Cage had just entered. It was an antique shop. Gently pushing open the door, a melodious bell rang out. Locke led the way into the antique shop, followed by Peggy. The entire hall was packed with antiques, leaving only a narrow passageway wide enough for one person to pass through. There were even scattered papers on the floor. "Are you looking to sell antiques?" Peggy glanced at Locke, who seemed lost in thought, and began to survey his surroundings. The scene before him gradually overlapped with a movie in Locke's memory, until his eyes fell on a half-man-high clay pot. "Do you like this?" Following Locke's gaze, Peggy spotted the pot, examined the patterns, and wanted to touch it. "Stop!" Locke, who remembered the plot of the movie, quickly stopped Peggy's action and explained, "This is a legacy passed down from the Hunter dynasty. It is said that the second king of the Hunter dynasty was a powerful black wizard. He once used this clay pot to imprison his wife for 10 years. This clay pot has incredible magic power. Anyone who opens this clay pot will be sucked into it and sealed for 10 years. Do you still believe these legends?" "This is not at all, Papa." Before Peggy finished speaking, a burst of applause came out. Locke looked up and recognized that it was Cage in a black windbreaker. He walked downstairs while clapping and looked at Locke. "Stranger boy, you have good knowledge." "Thank you, I just happened to have some research on mysticism," Locke said calmly. There were no cameras here. And the film he remembered wasn't filmed at this time. Locke studied him carefully, his judgment becoming more certain. "I've come here to seek your guidance, hoping to receive your instruction, Mr. Balthazar." Peggy looked at Locke with a puzzled expression, confused by his sudden words. But wisely, she remained silent, watching Locke and Balthazar silently. When Uncle Cage heard Balthazar's name, the room felt strangely chilled, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. "My name is Locke Lee, an orphan from Dallas, Texas, attending St. Private High School. I stumbled across some ancient books and saw you on the street. You look just like the portrait." Feeling the temperature drop, Locke took off his coat and draped it over Peggy, saying slowly, "It seems my earlier probing was successful. I wonder if I have the honor of becoming your student." As he spoke, Locke's gaze lingered on Balthazar's hand, where a yellow gemstone ring shone brightly. After staring at Locke and Peggy for a long time, Balthazar said slowly, "I don't know what you are talking about. You have found the wrong person. You'd better leave before I lose my temper." Chapter 11 Magic Book. By this time, Locke was absolutely certain that the Cage before him was Balthazar, the character from the film he'd seen called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. The film's plot was simple, focusing on the war between the Dark and White Wizard factions. It began over 1,000 years ago, when Merlin, leader of the White Wizards, was about to engage in a final battle with Morgana, leader of the Dark Wizards. Hafiz, one of Merlin's 3 disciples, betrayed Merlin. With Hafiz's help, Morgana attacked Merlin's castle, intending to kill him by surprise. The initial attack was successful, but Merlin was caught off guard and critically wounded. Morgana's ultimate victory, however, was not achieved. Just then, 2 of Merlin's other disciples, Balthazar and Veronica, noticed something was amiss and arrived in time. At the critical moment, Balthazar's lover, Veronica, absorbed Morgana's soul into her own body, sealing herself in a dark prison. By this time, Merlin was gravely wounded and near death. In his final moments, Merlin removed the dragon ring from his finger and told his disciple, Balthazar, that the only way to truly kill Morgana was to find his successor, the only way to rescue Veronica. Balthazar's search lasted for over 1,000 years, during which he continually battled Whoreface, and in one battle, successfully sealed Whoreface. Locke's refusal of Balthazar was not surprising. Balthazar, now focused on finding Merlin's successor and rescuing his beloved Veronica, had no interest in taking on a disciple. Locke hesitated, unsure whether to take the risk. But the extraordinary power was right before his eyes. While the system was magical, it didn't grant him direct access to supernatural powers. He was unsure whether Balthazar would move and hide after this encounter. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know if he would ever find him again. Locke quickly decided to take a risk. The system cheat didn't grant magical abilities, and while the increased attribute points would certainly make him extremely powerful, it wouldn't grant him immortality. He simply didn't want to miss the opportunity before him. Recalling the film's plot, Locke finally spoke, I know where Merlin's descendant is. Under the witness of the contract, I promise that if you're willing to teach me magic, in exchange, I'll reveal his whereabouts. Boom. Locke's words had barely escaped his lips when a beam of magical light struck him. Ah! Peggy screamed, then realized Locke was trapped by a stream of water. Balthazar approached Locke with a sinister aura. Whereas Merlin's descendant, Balthazar's murderous aura was now several times stronger than any opponent Locke had faced in meditation battle. Peggy, who had initially screamed in fear, was now speechless. I don't know if he's been reincarnated yet, But I know the child you'll be reborn as will appear there in 10 years. As long as no one tries to change him, he'll be there in 10 years. Ignoring the water swirling around him, Locke met Balthazar's eyes and spoke each word with measured precision. I'm not your enemy. I also guarantee that what I say is true. I'm willing to sign this contract. If it were a dark wizard, or even a strange white wizard, Locke wouldn't dare do this, as wizards have many methods of torture. Fortunately, Balthazar was a white wizard, a key character in the film, and his personality was within Locke's expectations. He was kind, if a bit pedantic, and wouldn't easily harm unrelated individuals. After using magic to confirm Locke's authenticity, Balthazar hesitated for a moment before finally withdrawing the water from his body. You'd better not lie to me. Of course, you've already confirmed that, haven't you? Perhaps it was the mental boost brought on by his superior intelligence. Locke had felt a faint sense of something when Balthazar's magic probed him. For thousands of years after Merlin's death, Balthazar had searched for Merlin's successor, never giving up. It was arguably his greatest obsession. I can teach you magic, but I won't take you as my apprentice. And you must tell me now where Merlin's successor is. Locke suppressed his excitement, aware of the abruptness of his appearance and the difficulty of explaining why he would reveal Merlin's successor's whereabouts. But in such a hurry, he had no better choice. Yes, but I demand that you teach me all the magical knowledge you know without reservation, only if what you say is true. Balthazar produced a book and, with a wave of his hand, reproduced it. He held it before Locke's eyes. This book contains everything you desire. Tell me the information, and I will teach you the basics. The book is yours, and I require you to swear to the truth and to remain my enemy. No problem, Locke readily agreed. He had no intention of intervening in the wars between wizards. Without hesitation, he followed Balthazar's demands and swore, thus establishing a pact with Balthazar. As the contract shimmered into shape, Locke's oath proved true. Balthazar knew everything Locke had said was true. That was the magic of magic. Balthazar's breath quickened. Over 1,000 years of aimless searching was not a pleasant feeling, especially as time dragged on. Even the most resolute faith began to waver. Fortunately, Locke's news of Merlin's successor was confirmed to be true, marking the end of his millennia-long wait. The Merlin's successor you're looking for is in New York. His name is Dave D. Boucher. If he hasn't been born yet, you can wait a year or two. He'll be the one you seek. After the two men completed the contract, Locke said slowly, I've done my part. It's your turn now. No problem. Balthazar handed Locke the book he was holding. It contained everything I knew about magic, from the very beginning. If you have any questions, you can always ask me. Locke glanced down at the ancient book in his hands and couldn't help but ask, so, can we start now? I think you have other things to take care of. Balthazar looked at Peggy and waved his hand. A flash of magic flashed. She will forget what happened just now. Take her back and come back when you are ready. Okay. Locke looked at the unconscious Peggy, picked her up, and left the antique shop. You're back, Locke. Back at the hotel, the female teacher quickly saw Locke and Peggy in his arms. What's wrong with Peggy? She must be tired from playing. I'll put her in her room to rest. The teacher looked at Peggy, confirmed that she was fine, and nodded. No problem, come in. To take care of the school's ace, the female teacher and Peggy shared the same room. After putting Peggy to bed, Locke returned to his room and couldn't wait to flip through the magic book he had just acquired. As Locke continued to flip through the book, the system prompted, do you want to learn the meditation skill? Locke chose yes. And soon a flood of knowledge and experience flooded his mind. He gained a new meditation skill, elementary, and a +2 intelligence boost. He compared his knowledge with a book, confirmed it was correct, and began his first attempt. Soon, the system continued to prompt him with +1 meditation experience. With the system in place, as long as he had the skill book, even without a teacher, Locke, a skilled hacker, could easily learn. Chapter 12 It's hard to lose. The magic book Balthazar gave Locke was a massive tome, its practical knowledge many times greater than that of a book of similar thickness, seemingly endless. It contained a wealth of magical principles, lessons learned, and various spells, practically summarizing Balthazar's entire magical knowledge. By dinner time, Peggy finally awoke, having truly forgotten what had happened in the antique shop. You said I fell asleep in the antique shop, and then you brought me back, Peggy asked Locke after dinner. The sudden memory gap puzzled her. With her intelligence and the same high-definition visual memory as young Sheldon, she would never forget what she had experienced. However, she couldn't recall anything after entering the antique shop. Yes, you fainted after touching the pottery jar. I was startled too. I had no choice but to bring you back. That's so strange. And is the story about the clay pot you told me true? What story? Locke feigned confusion. You mean the story about opening the clay pot and being sealed for 10 years? That's just a legend. I only read it in a book before. How can it be true? We have to believe in science. Peggy, like Sheldon, believed in science and had no interest in the occult. However, she couldn't figure out the memory issues she was having. Seeing this, Locke began to distract her. It's a bit of a shame. I was planning to bring back some gifts. Who are you buying gifts for? Peggy said. I remember you were an orphan and didn't have a girlfriend. For the managers at the orphanage, Locke said. They've been really caring for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to grow up successfully. I'm also planning to buy some candy and toys for the children there. In that case, let's go together tomorrow afternoon, Peggy said. Having finally distracted Peggy, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. He talked to Peggy about choosing gifts before returning to his room to rest. Over the next few days, whenever he had free time, Locke constantly flipped through his newly acquired magic book, trying to learn any spells. However, aside from the most basic spells, most of the spells in the book couldn't be turned into skills. According to the system prompt, his meditation level was too low, and his accumulated magic power wasn't sufficient to learn the required skills. Locke could only patiently level up his meditation. As he continued meditating, he could feel pure energy constantly flowing from the outside world into his body. The sensation was like the most relaxing full-body massage, making him unable to resist immersing himself in it. Unfortunately, the improvement in meditation was much slower than Locke had imagined. Skills like boxing and judo could reach intermediate levels in half a day at most, but after several days, Locke's meditation skills remained at the elementary level, and his experience level was very slow. During these days, Balthazar and Locke met again, and during this time, he also investigated Locke's identity, including every detail from birth to the present. This wasn't surprising. Balthazar was always suspicious of unexpected people. After more than 1,000 years of wandering and searching, Balthazar had developed his own network of contacts. The information he found simply left him baffled. How could Locke, a man who knew nothing before, know the true identity of Merlin's descendant? Through previous interactions, Balthazar had confirmed that Locke hadn't learned any magic before meeting him and was an ordinary person. Ultimately, he attributed everything to fate. This explanation, however, seemed plausible to Balthazar. It wasn't scientific, but it was magical. As for Dave, Merlin's descendant, Balthazar had also located him. He'd only been born so recently, and in a city as large as New York, there were more than one with the same name. Yet, only one person reacted to the dragon ring left by Merlin, proving he was indeed Merlin's descendant. Dave couldn't even speak now, so Balthazar couldn't just walk up and offer to teach him magic. He could only watch quietly, waiting for Dave to grow. Locke's sudden encounter with magic had dampened his enthusiasm for the mathematical Olympiad. The finals were held by the top 8 teams selected through the preliminaries. They would then draw lots and face off against each other in a 2-on-1 matchup, ultimately determining the final champion. Relying on their sheer skill, Locke's 5-member team easily advanced to the finals. This time, their opponent was Trinity High School, a parochial school. Trinity's reputation was quite impressive. It was one of New York's top private schools and the previous mathematical Olympiad champions. Last year, Locke lost to them by a single problem. This time, the well-prepared Locke and his 5 members were ready to avenge their previous defeat. Before the finals, Locke clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention. Well, after a year of preparation since last year's competition, today is the day. Our opponent is the renowned Trinity High School, a longtime rival. We must give it our all and win the finals, champions, everyone shouted. Those who made it to the finals of the mathematical Olympiad were highly intelligent. In the preliminaries, most competitors had to do simple mental arithmetic with pen and paper, but in the finals, everyone was doing mental arithmetic. Even calculators were pointless. Those extremely complex calculations were easily calculated by an expert in their heads, even with the time it takes to type them in. The rules for the quarterfinals differed from those of the previous qualifiers. They adopted a quick answer format. The organizers randomly selected 100 questions from a question bank and displayed them on a projection screen. After answering the questions, the contestants pressed the buzzer as quickly as possible to qualify. Correct answers earned 1 point, while incorrect answers were deducted 2 points. After all the questions were completed, the team with the highest score won. As expected, the other players turned their attention to Locke and Paige. They hadn't had many opportunities to shine in the previous semifinals, so, unsurprisingly, the key to the match would be their performance. After encouraging his teammates, Locke led the team to the North Shore High School auditorium stage, where they sat at a table, each with a buzzer in front of them. While Paige was a newcomer to Locke's group, the other 5 were all old rivals from last year, with Kent, the leader, looking proud. 4 members of their team have IQs exceeding 160, with Kent reaching 174. In comparison, Locke and Peggy's other 3 are somewhat behind. To some extent, last year's loss, when Locke missed the mark by a single question, reflects the disparity in skill between the 2 teams. In fact, in the finals, Locke completely outperformed. This time, the instructor is confident that Locke's performance will be even better than last year's. With Peggy joining the team, I have the advantage. This final will be difficult for me to lose. Chapter 13 Apologize Properly. The result was just as expected. The competition was completely foregone conclusion. After the first question appeared, Locke almost immediately pressed the buzzer and gave the correct answer, surprising his opponents. They felt Locke's performance was significantly better than last year's. In just over an hour, the competition was over, with Locke's team crushing their opponents with a commanding 78-22 victory. After glancing at the final score, the host announced, "Our champion has been chosen, Sterling High School." Yes, Lip, thrilled with the victory, ran over to the Trinity High School Math Olympiad team and practically pointed at the livid Trinity captain, Kent, dancing and singing, "Do you like me now? Do you like this?" Yet, he still remembered the mocking attitude Kent had shown him after his victory last year, and naturally, he took the opportunity to return the favor. HMPH, Kent, the Trinity captain, blushed crimson, snorted, and left the competition without even attending the awards ceremony. Still so arrogant even after losing, watching the other team leave, Lip complained indignantly, "We didn't act like them last year when we were runner-up. Don't worry about it, students. Just remember we won. We'll go collect the awards now. Let's just enjoy the joy of victory." The math teacher, who led the team, clapped his hands and laughed. Locke understood the reason for the other team's rude behavior. High intelligence doesn't necessarily mean broad-mindedness. On the contrary, because geniuses have far superior intelligence and are accustomed to winning, they experience even more intense negative emotions when faced with failure or even disagreement. This isn't an isolated case. The scientific community is full of such people. For example, Newton and Edison are both widely recognized as examples of extremely poor character. This fact isn't widely known in the East, but it's no secret in Europe and the United States. In episodes like Young Sheldon and The Big Bang Theory, scientists often argue over theories and become heated. While understandable, Locke wasn't willing to give in. He recalled Leonard's victory in the school physics competition in The Big Bang Theory. After receiving his medal, he declared, "Don't worry about those guys from Trinity High. If they don't want to accept the award, that's fine. Even if they act arrogant, there's always someone who disagrees." Huh? Everyone turned to Locke. "Our finals championship medals." Locke lifted the medal from his chest and waved it vigorously. "Ha ha ha!" Everyone laughed heartily as they watched the Trinity team leave. As for the shadows in the hearts of the Trinity Olympiad team members after this news spread, what did they have to do with them? While feeling happy, Locke glanced at the system task and pocketed 500 potential points. This kind of task reward was more enjoyable and effortless. As for next year, Locke thought he could try again. Besides the rewards for completing the system task, the school also offered a cash bonus of $2,000, plus 5 days of free time to explore local scenic spots or other attractions. The school had already paid for the hotel rooms in advance, and each person even received a $1,000 reimbursement credit, totaling $3,000, a fortune in 1989. Good grades mean money, it's no joke, whether in the East or the West. If you've been raised for pleasure, then you should be wary. If you don't recognize this and strive to break free from your current situation, you'll ultimately be raised like a pig, your only value in society being to be harvested and served on the table. After a few days in New York, the group returned to school in high spirits, and Locke realized that Christmas was already approaching. In his previous life in the East, Locke hadn't cared much for Christmas. In this life, as an orphan, he felt even less special about it. This Christmas, he would likely spend it quietly in his dorm, as usual. That weekend, Locke rode his bike to Mandy's house and knocked on the door. Soon, a maid opened the door. Seeing Locke, she led him directly to Mandy's room, where she immediately spotted her in an orange coat. "You're here early today," she said, ushering him to the desk and placing his books on it. Mandy said, "I need to clean up, you read for a while." Locke didn't care, taking out the book he had prepared and began to read. He had come to tutoring with the intention of making money, working for a capitalist. If you don't slack off, you're not a good employee. Locke tutored her solely for the generous fees, but after winning the lottery, he no longer cared about them, treating them as pocket money at best. Aside from opportunities he could capture from his memory, Locke's stock investments were all long-term holdings. Some of these, like Buffett, were something Locke, with his memories, could only do better. After his first win, Locke finally gave in to his greed and switched to lottery play. He chose niche lotteries with modest payouts, often jackpots of hundreds of thousands of dollars. After deducting various taxes, the final payout is only about half. If one wants to emulate Buffett's snowball strategy, the bigger the initial snowball, the greater the future returns. Of course, the lottery wasn't purchased in Dallas, but in a nearby city, essentially switching locations. This was all done to be as inconspicuous as possible. Winning first prize in each lottery only once ensured minimal attention. After all, winning all the time would draw too much attention. Locke was still a nobody, and being targeted by lottery issuers wouldn't end well. "Locke," Mandy's voice echoed from behind after a long pause. The sight made Locke give a small salute. Seeing Locke's reaction, Mandy felt a surge of joy, and her smile grew even sweeter. She had prepared for this event for a long time, having carefully studied Locke's preferences through previous failures and crafted this battle uniform specifically for him. The close-fitting outfit perfectly accentuated Mandy's figure, and paired with her innocent and sweet appearance, it heightened her allure. A girl with an innocent and sweet appearance isn't necessarily truly innocent. At least from what Locke knew, Mandy was quite arrogant, selfish, and cunning. The girl's new outfit was indeed quite attractive. Locke's gaze lingered on Mandy for several seconds before slowly retracting. "Let's begin. Is there anything you don't understand about the parabolic problem I explained to you last time?" "I still feel like there's a lot I don't understand." Mandy sat down beside Locke, her expression pitiful, which, combined with her innocent face, was extremely alluring. Raising an eyebrow, Locke, having been tested many times, said calmly, "Then let's start from the beginning. Look, the equation of the parabola is this." Picking up a pen and writing the equation on the manuscript paper, Locke was about to join in drawing the graph when Mandy beside him. "What are you doing?" The girl's action surprised Locke. So far, Mandy had only been seducing herself, but he hadn't expected her to be so direct this time. Chapter 14 Just right. By the time Locke returned to the dorm that evening, Mandy's voice was a bit hoarse. The near stomach-pounding, soul-shaking dolphin sounds she'd evoked weren't without cost. In his sage state, Locke was quite satisfied with the encounter. Mandy, seemingly innocent but actually incredibly fiery, lived up to his expectations. But he also knew that his training had been disrupted by a goblin. Once word got out, the goblins at school would undoubtedly be furious, and he would be met with exponentially more passion than before. The animal world's narration magically echoed in Locke's ears, and he muttered to himself, "Spring has arrived earlier than expected this year. Boys, as it turns out, must take good care of themselves when out and about. A single misstep can land you in serious trouble." Sure enough, he returned to school the next Monday. "Wow, Locke, those girls are even more enthusiastic today than usual," Lip said with a smile in the cafeteria at noon on Monday. Suddenly, he lowered his voice and leaned closer to Locke. "I heard that you and Mandy were." Locke glanced at Lip's smug look and felt a little tired and didn't want to answer. "Don't be so shy, bro, it's all over the school. I heard that Mandy's legs were weak and she was wobbling when she came to school this morning. They said you were like a wild animal and you don't get tired at all." Sure enough, gossip like that spreads fast, Locke could only complain in his heart. Especially a girl like Mandy who loves to show off and is so vain, she would definitely find a way to spread the news. "Hi, Locke," Mandy said, bringing her two followers to Locke's side. Lip quickly stopped talking, glanced at Mandy, then turned his gaze to the tolerant girl next to Mandy, his signature smile on his face. "What's up?" Locke responded. "Christmas is coming soon. I'm planning to hold a party at home. Do you want to come with me? Christmas party? Locke frowned slightly. The importance of Christmas in the United States is comparable to the Spring Festival in the East, but after so many years of rebirth, Locke didn't have much feeling for this festival. Mainly because he was an orphan, it was difficult for him to fit into the atmosphere of this festival. Yes, it will definitely be very lively then. Mandy hugged Locke's arm and leaned close to Locke and asked in a low voice. Let's talk about it then. I'll go when I'm free. Looking at Mandy's expression, Locke could only answer like this. That's great. I'll change into the new clothes I prepared then. Mandy said the latter words in Locke's ear. After she finished, she found another place to sit with her two followers. Before Mandy and the other two were far away, Lip couldn't help but scramble up to Locke and excitedly said, Great, man. You must take me with you when the time comes. What does this have to do with you? Please, we're best friends, Lip said anxiously. Mandy's party is the coolest party at Sterling High School. All the pretty girls in the school go. If I can make it, I'll definitely be the envy of all the boys. Throwing a party costs money. In the United States, party organizers need to provide the venue, music, beer, snacks, and so on. The more upscale the party, the more money you have to spend. Mandy's family is wealthy. Her parents often travel for business and dote on her, so the parties she throws at home are very high-end and well-known among the students. The girls envy Mandy's fame and see attending her parties as a fashion statement. The girls who can attend Mandy's parties are usually good-looking and have good figures, otherwise, Mandy won't allow them to attend. With all these girls gathered, the boys, chasing after the pretty ones, naturally tried their best to get in. Gradually, invitations to the party became extremely sought after, with every student in the school hoping to get an invitation to Mandy's house party. Looking at Lip's expression, Locke knew that he had been holding back for so long in high school that he would be eager if given the slightest opportunity. If he refused, he would probably nag non-stop. I'll just get you in, and what happens after that is up to you. To avoid enduring his nagging for the next few days, Locke agreed. That's great, Locke, you're really my best brother. Lip raised his eyebrows in a very obscene manner. Your amazing record has been spread all over the school for a long time. Listening to what Mandy said just now, her voice is still a little hoarse. You are really amazing, you are simply my idol. Okay, I knew your plan from the beginning. You wanted to use me to get close to girls. Locke couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. But do you really think it will work? It's been more than 2 years since high school. What have you gained? There is always hope, Lip said with shining eyes. You had no interest before, and those girls gradually stopped trying. But now you finally get it. You know, when fighter jets are on a mission, there is usually a wingman to support them. I can be your wingman. The wingman you are talking about is the kind that once the attack fails, the main aircraft retreats, and the wingman stays behind to desperately cover it. If necessary, they need to die with the enemy. Locke smiled. Are you planning to be cannon fodder? Of course, Lip analyzed shrewdly. With your face, the success rate of dating beautiful girls is already 90%. Coupled with your fighting ability, once the news spreads, as long as you want, the success rate can be said to be 100%. Even if what you said is right, are you sure that the wingman can enjoy the fruits of victory? Locke said with ill intentions. Of course, Lip said confidently. This is America. It's not just boys who chase girls. Girls are incredibly proactive. You're already the most handsome guy on campus. Once word gets out, you'll become a true dolphin lover. Once those girls get the word out, they'll definitely flock to you. As your good friend and wingman, my chances of approaching girls will greatly increase. With your taste, you'll only be interested in a few top girls. I'll take care of the rest. Even if my chances of success are low, given a large enough base, I'm sure it will work. I originally thought that even waiting until college, graduation, a job, or even marriage would mean I'd never have a chance to achieve my life goals. But now, a miracle has happened. It's happening right before my eyes. Ah, thank God. Lip grew increasingly excited, finally making the sign of the cross and praising God devoutly. Locke couldn't help but shake his head, speechless, but he didn't refuse outright as he usually does. As his finances gradually improved, his mindset shifted, becoming more relaxed and willing to enjoy life occasionally. He was also quite satisfied with Mandy's behavior, not being clingy. Yesterday, Mandy wanted to officially become his girlfriend. But Locke flatly refused. After all, being officially together meant going shopping, dating, and so on. Locke decided to enjoy life a bit, but he wasn't ready to completely abandon her. He didn't have the time. In the end, after a harmonious discussion, the two decided to maintain their friendship at the level of benefit. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 We Are Best Friends. Mandy's villa was unlike the typical American country house, it was a true manor. Its gate was propped up by tall stone pillars, and a fountain graced the square in front. From the gate, across the square and lawn, one could see the main building, along with several adjacent buildings, a truly luxurious affair. Locke walked ahead, accompanied by Lip and 3 other fellow Olympiad participants, as they arrived at the entrance. "Hello, please show us your invitations," the professional party attendant politely said upon seeing Locke and his companions. "Oh no, this is terrible," one of the team members groaned. Mandy had only given Locke an invitation. They had never seen anything like this, and for a moment, they felt hopeless. Locke ignored the attendant and peeked inside. He saw Mandy and her best friend chatting not far from the entrance. He waved and said, "Mandy, over here." Hearing Locke's voice and seeing him, Mandy immediately abandoned her 2 best friends and trotted over, beaming brightly. "Locke, you're here. Come on in." As she spoke, Mandy gestured to the attendant at the door to open quickly. "These are my friends. Can we come in together?" Locke pointed at Lip and the other 2, who were staring intently at Mandy. Seeing them staring at Mandy as if they had never seen a woman before, he frowned in disdain. Of course, Mandy glanced at them, ignoring them and addressing Locke enthusiastically. With Mandy as the host, the doorman naturally didn't ask for an invitation or anything. They obediently opened the gate and let the group into the manor. "Okay, it's up to you from now on. Have fun," Locke said, waving to the 3 before heading inside with Mandy. Mandy had deliberately stayed at the door, claiming to be the host welcoming the students, but in reality, she was waiting for Locke. Now that their goal had been achieved, they didn't want to waste any more time. Seeing Mandy holding Locke's arm, and Mandy's 2 best friends and followers, Karen and Jennifer, surrounding Locke as they headed towards the main building, Lip and the other 2 couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Karen's figure is amazing. I'd say she's the queen of the first day. Lip excitedly looked at the girl's back, recalling the rolling hills and raging waves that had just filled his eyes. "I prefer Jennifer. I heard she loves motorcycles and is very familiar with vehicles. Maybe I can invite her to watch Transformers with us." Another team member looked at Kevin with longing for a moment. "Kevin, what about you?" "Of course, Mandy. That delicate and pure face, and that unique voice, it makes you weak in the knees. The captain is so lucky." "That's right. Although Locke is very picky and he says that appearance is the key, Karen and Jennifer are definitely in Locke's aesthetic line. After he experiences them himself, we can ask his opinion," Lip said with a very obscene smile. "Okay, let's not forget our goal. Look around, there are so many girls. If we don't approach them, it would be a waste of opportunity." "Yeah, we should go and look for opportunities." Everyone was gathered in the square and lawn in front of the main building. The girls were all dressed in fashionable outfits, showing off their youthful and sexy figures. Lip was dazzled by the bustling scene and the beautiful girls dressed up. "Kevin, you go first." "I'll support you from behind." "Lip, you go first. Weren't you the most enthusiastic when we came here before? Why aren't you so scared now?" "I'll go first." "How about we go together and wait until we successfully approach a girl before we split up?" "That's right. We're teammates. We should all work together at this time." The 3 of them hesitated, encouraging each other. Finally, Kevin stepped forward and said, "Okay, I'll go first." He was the only one with a girlfriend, but after his girlfriend insisted on getting married, he had no place to vent his hormones and had deliberately not told her today, just to see if there was a chance he'd meet an easy girl. Just like the youth of students across the pond, high school isn't all about abortions, car accidents, and going abroad. Most American high school students aren't as unrestrained and flamboyant as depicted in movies. Most are just ordinary boys, harboring restless hearts but lacking the opportunity. Some American girls, however, are more insistent than the final step. Of course, in the eyes of seasoned men, such psychological defenses are merely reserved for subtle manipulation. Mandy, already dressed to the nines, embraced Locke's arm and headed straight for their bedroom. Locke didn't mind occasional relaxation, but only during tutoring sessions. The rest of the time, Locke was busy honing his skills, especially meditation, which could enhance his combat prowess, a daily requirement. Therefore, even if Mandy wanted to date Locke, it wouldn't be easy. After enjoying a sumptuous meal, Mandy found ordinary vegetables and carrots unappealing. She had long since broken up with her ex-boyfriend, John, from the football team, citing a lack of compatibility and a lack of feelings. The rumors about Locke and Mandy spread quickly. John, initially confused, didn't have time to ask Mandy what the reason was, but soon the rumors revealed their hidden meaning. If it had been anyone else, John would have definitely sought revenge. Football is the most popular sport in the United States, emphasizing the clash of strength. It's safe to say that players who play football in high school are among the best physically. When young Sheldon first arrived at school, his mother, Mary, repeatedly told him that if anyone tried to bully him, he should always say his father was the football coach and his brother was a player, as football players were often labeled bullies in high school. But John didn't dare to bother Locke, and even his friends on the football team didn't dare to help after learning it was Locke. This was due to Locke's lingering influence. Even from his first day in high school, Locke had become the target of many girls, and naturally, some would have been offended. Locke was still trying to stay out of it, but that didn't mean he would tolerate the bullying. He knew that if he gave in, he would be constantly bullied by them for the rest of his high school life. On the day he was threatened, he picked up the boxing and wrestling skill books and quickly reached the intermediate level. With his already superior physical fitness and skills, he beat several rising school bullies one after another, and no one in the school dared to bother him anymore. John had been severely punished by Locke before, so even with the green grass above his head, he still didn't dare to bother Locke. Locke was very familiar with Mandy's bedroom. Her mother was also a very special woman. Even among the relatively open-minded American parents, she was an anomaly. She had very few restrictions on Mandy and even provided various assistance to Mandy's some of her more outrageous behaviors. Once, when Locke was tutoring Mandy, he thought that since her mother was at home, it would be best to restrain himself and give her lessons seriously. Unexpectedly, Mandy didn't seem to mind. Instead, she became even more enthusiastic. Her mother, who was at the doorway, heard them, but not only didn't interrupt them, but when they finished, she enthusiastically pushed open the bedroom door and asked with a smile, "Did you have a good time? What else do you need? Would you like some snacks to recharge your batteries, or a glass of wine to cheer you up? Just let me know if you need anything. God loves you." From that moment on, Locke had a better understanding of how Mandy's extremely self-centered personality developed. Entering the bedroom, he quickly closed the door, not even bothering to lock it. Mandy eagerly glanced at Locke, feeling she hadn't experienced the profound depths of science in ages. Seeing the sparkle in Mandy's eyes, Locke knew his eager student was eager to learn more. Soon, beautiful singing began to emanate, and Jennifer and Karen couldn't help but lean over to the door, listening with eerie expressions. Mandy's house was luxuriously decorated, and unlike the typical wooden structure of a country villa, the soundproofing was quite good, but if the sound was too loud, it could still be heard from the doorway. Especially when Mandy's dolphin voice, a sound they had never heard before, shuddered in unison, their arms unconsciously folded across their chests, and they listened even more intently. The soul-stirring singing lasted for over an hour, and the two girls were mesmerized, oblivious to the passage of time, still reminiscing about it even after the party ended. Karen, as the two of them walked home together, gazing at the moon in the sky, Jennifer couldn't help but exclaim enviously, "Mandy is truly happy tonight." "But why, Karen?" Still looking silly and adorable, a puzzled expression crossed her face. "Of course it's because Locke is a real man. I've never seen or even heard of such a man before. I thought Mandy's previous description was a bit exaggerated, just to show off. I didn't expect it to be true. Mandy is so lucky." Karen couldn't help but agree. You can hear the overflowing happiness from her voice. "Mandy is so lucky. She seems to be the first one to hook up with Locke." "Don't worry." Jennifer seemed to understand what Karen was thinking, and said confidently, "Locke has never admitted that Mandy is his girlfriend. She can't have Mandy alone. We are best friends. There will definitely be opportunities in the future." "That's right." Karen looked at the moon in the sky and couldn't help looking forward to it. Chapter 16, Choosing Science for Magic. Jennifer and Karen tacitly kept the party secret, especially after studying with Locke. They were even more reluctant to share the secret. After all, Locke was incredibly busy. Besides mixed martial arts, marksmanship, and cold weapons, he also needed to hone his skills in math, physics, and chemistry, especially after learning magic. Locke didn't have much time to begin with. If word got out, there would be more wolves than meat, and who knows how long it would take to get his hands on it. Ever since meeting Balthazar in New York, even after returning to Dallas, Locke had maintained contact with him, frequently asking him for advice on magic. The art of magic, as practiced by the sorcerer's apprentice, has been passed down for millennia, but it's closely tied to science and demands an extremely high IQ. According to Balthazar, a magician's ability to perform magic stems from their ability to utilize their brains far more efficiently than an average person, unlocking their full potential. For example, Dave, Merlin's descendant, was also a highly intelligent individual, having studied molecular physics in college. He was also known for his fundamental ability to summon fire. Vibration heats up molecules. Even solids are composed of molecules in constant motion. By manipulating this vibration through magical power, the temperature of an object can be rapidly increased, potentially igniting it. Of course, according to Locke's theory, ancient magicians performed various spells, but they clearly did not understand their underlying principles. They simply relied on experience and their own imagination, experimenting and creating one magic spell after another. With the advancement of science, some phenomena can now be explained by science, which is why Balthazar connected these scientific theories with magic. Of course, modern science has its limitations. Many of the magic descriptions in the grimoire Locke obtained still defy current scientific explanation. For example, teleportation involves various spatial theories and complex calculations, clearly beyond the reach of modern science. Learning to perform these spells requires careful practice according to the instructions in the grimoire. After all, the creation of these spells involved countless magicians' research and experimentation, sometimes even at the cost of their own lives, to gradually develop and refine them. Locke had originally planned to major in economics and management in college. He could invest the money he earned in finance into banking, control a major bank, and ultimately build his own jebel through investment. Wells Fargo, still a local bank, was a good choice. However, since this world possessed supernatural abilities, pursuing transcendence and achieving immortality became Locke's primary goal, with wealth and power naturally taking a backseat. No matter how much wealth or power one possesses, death inevitably leads to dust, but the supernatural offers the opportunity for immortality. Balthazar had lived for over 1,000 years and remained vigorous. Since science could aid in the study and understanding of magic, Locke decided to major in mathematics, the foundation of all science. Physics and chemistry were also essential. Mastering these skills would suffice, especially after becoming a magician. From the moment he understood the principles of magic, Locke had determined to become a mathematician. Seeing Locke still keeping his school schedule incredibly tight and constantly turning down invitations from girls, even Mandy and Jennifer, he only agreed to go out with them on weekends when he was free. Lip couldn't understand this. Seeing Locke still reading books on quantum physics derived from the quark model during dinner, he couldn't help but sigh. He had thought that after experiencing the beauty of girls, Locke would go on more dates, which would give him opportunities, but it turned out he was overthinking it. Locke gave him a disdainful look. After spending so much time together, he had long seen through Lip. "I have good news to announce today," Peggy said. "What good news?" "You know, I gave a talk on high-temperature quantum chromodynamics at a quantum chromodynamics lecture a while ago." "Yes, I was with you. After your answer Dr. John Sturgis's questions, he invited you to give a talk. It was very good. Since then, I've been in touch with Dr. John Sturgis, and he invited me to sit in on his class yesterday." "That's great." "Congratulations," Locke said with a smile. "It should be congratulations to both of us," Peggy said to Locke. "What do you mean?" "I told Dr. Sturgis you wanted to audit the class, and he agreed, so you could drive me there." "What?" Locke was surprised. "Why not let Linda drive you there?" "You know," Peggy shrugged. "Because you often accompany me to tech fairs and lectures. My mom and dad go out together from time to time." They're in the middle of a passionate period right now. Locke didn't know what to say. To trigger more quests, he had indeed been more attentive to Peggy, and he had gained a lot of potential points. It seemed like Peggy had become accustomed to it. Moreover, compared to Linda, Peggy preferred Locke's company because they had more common topics to discuss. Mentioning Dr. John Sturgis reminded Locke of young Sheldon. It seemed that he had first met Peggy in his class. Locke had also encountered young Sheldon when he was volunteering at the church. Although he recognized him, he had no intention of getting to know him. The reason was simple: he didn't really want to make friends with Sheldon. Anyone who's watched The Big Bang Theory knows Sheldon has been an annoyance since childhood. While watching him interact with others might be amusing on the show, when it comes to him, no one can stand being around him all day. Some online suggest that people like Sheldon should be more tolerant, but that's just easygoing trolling. If someone were to spend all day with someone like him, he'd probably become unbearable after just a few days. Peggy, on the other hand, is just as proud of her science as Sheldon, but she possesses a high emotional intelligence and easily connects with the girls at school. When they first met Locke, she was rather rude because she viewed him as a rival. Now, however, they get along quite well. If it were Sheldon, Locke wouldn't be tempted to kill him. But on second thought, even a supporting character like Peggy can trigger so many quests, increasing his potential point accumulation rate by several %. If it were Sheldon, who knows if it would bring even more surprises. Thinking of this, Locke said with some reluctance, "In that case, I'll go with you. I'm also quite interested in Dr. John Sturgis's course." Chapter 17. The two little geniuses met for the first time. The University of Texas at Austin wasn't very close to Locke's high school, so the trip required a car. This time, Locke drove a used car he'd bought himself. Cars are a staple of transportation in the United States. Many high school students, if their families can afford it, receive a car as a gift from their parents at the age of 16. Most are second-hand, making them economical. After Locke won his first lottery, he used the remaining money to buy a used car, replacing his bicycle as his daily mode of transportation. "Okay, here it is," Locke confirmed the classroom's address and led Peggy into the room. "Let's sit in the front row, so we don't have to worry about our view being blocked." Locke glanced at the already packed classroom. "Okay," Peggy nodded, carrying her backpack to the front row and choosing a seat. Locke sat down next to him and took out his notebooks. At this moment, a little boy walked in and came to the seat Peggy had chosen. After a moment's hesitation, he said, "Hello, Peggy," who was taking a book out of her pink backpack, saw Sheldon and showed interest. "Hello, who are you?" "I'm Peggy." "I like your bow tie," Peggy said with an emotionally intelligent smile. "Thank you," little Sheldon said. "You look very young. Did an adult in the class bring you here?" Peggy smiled and said, "No, it was Dr. John Sturgis who heard my lecture on quantum chromodynamics at high temperatures and invited me to audit his class." "Is that so?" "Yes, he's a very nice guy." Peggy's smile grew even sweeter. She felt good to be able to meet a kid her own age while auditing the class. Unlike Peggy, little Sheldon, feeling like he might be stealing Dr. Sturgis's attention, looked a bit grim. "Interesting. Let me be clear, Dr. Sturgis is my advisor and my grandmother's boyfriend. He even came to my house for spaghetti and hot dogs." Dr. John Sturgis and Sheldon had many similarities. They both spent their lives immersed in scientific research, completely absorbed in their own worlds, completely clueless about the ways of the world. If Sheldon hadn't met Leonard, a roommate who'd been groomed by his own mother since childhood, he'd likely end up lonely and friendless like him. Little Sheldon's grandmother, a popular figure among the elderly, met Dr. John Sturgis while taking little Sheldon to a lecture, and a spark struck between them. The person most excited about this wasn't the two people involved, but Sheldon, who went out of his way to help, looking as if he couldn't wait to marry his grandmother to John. Seeing a little girl suddenly appear out of nowhere and try to steal John's attention, young Sheldon couldn't help but brag about his close relationship with Dr. Sturgis. So, Peggy's high emotional intelligence immediately detected Sheldon's hostility, and the slight sense of closeness that had just arisen in her heart instantly disappeared. Young Sheldon responded with a hint of anger. "You know this is a very advanced course, right? We'll talk about." This further annoyed Peggy, still smiling, but interrupted young Sheldon. "Do you know if you will teach you how to use matrix multiplication to calculate 8-color gluons?" Young Sheldon opened his mouth, but his momentum faltered. "I don't know." "Then do you know how to do Leibniz's integral rule?" Peggy pressed the issue. Young Sheldon's expression was no longer controllable, and the corners of his mouth began to twitch. He reluctantly replied, "I don't know." "Then what do you know?" Peggy finally sneered. Little Sheldon was on the verge of tears. With nothing else to do, he finally snapped out, "I know you took my seat, haha." Locke couldn't help but laugh at this classic scene. He rubbed Peggy's head and said, "Good job, Peggy." Peggy shook Locke's hand off and rolled her eyes. She hated how Locke kept treating her like a little girl. Little Sheldon sat down angrily, ignoring the annoying girl next to him. But Peggy didn't forget to press the issue. "How old are you?" Feeling his confidence finally return, little Sheldon proudly replied, 10. "I'm 10 too," Peggy said, her smile widening. "When's your birthday?" Little Sheldon instinctively replied, "February 26th, March 17th. Peggy glanced back at the back of the lecture hall and said with a delighted smile, "I'm the youngest student in the class." "How interesting, indeed, you're our most amazing little genius." Locke watched Sheldon's expression, which had finally recovered, turn awkward again, and couldn't help but laugh again. When watching the show, his favorite part was watching Sheldon get humiliated. "Who are you?" Little Sheldon finally noticed Locke. "I'm Peggy's classmate, the one who brought her here, Locke Lee." "So you're a driver, ha ha ha?" Peggy couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, Sheldon has been annoying since he was a kid. Locke couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Ding. Triggering mission. Let Sheldon experience the harshness of society. His intelligence, surpassing everyone else since childhood, has made him too arrogant. Please let him know that he still has a long way to go in science. Base reward. 200 potential points, with additional rewards based on performance. Accept mission, Locke said without hesitation, feeling he would have completed the mission with all his might even without the system reward. Dr. Sturgis's class lasted over an hour. After the class, Locke packed up his things while thinking about how to let Sheldon experience the dangers of society. According to the plot, after learning about the existence of Peggy, a genius comparable to Little Sheldon's mother, Mary, would want to invite Peggy's parents to visit and see if they could become friends. Back then, Peggy would play chess with Sheldon, and after losing repeatedly to Peggy, Little Sheldon would flip the chessboard over. He could replace Peggy, but that was just the most common tactic, and there might be other ways. After packing his bag, Locke stood up and watched Sheldon meticulously pack his belongings. His eyes stumbled upon Sheldon's notebook, and a smile suddenly crossed his face. "Sheldon," Locke said. "What's up, driver?" Locke didn't answer directly, but simply took a pen from Peggy, took Sheldon's notebook, and scribbled a few words on it. "Hey, who told you to touch my notebook?" Sheldon quickly snatched his notebook back from Locke, looked down, and couldn't help but shout, "You changed my calculations, because it's wrong." "No way, I wouldn't make a mistake. I can't make a mistake." "Are you sure?" Locke smiled at Sheldon, his eyes full of care. Curious, Peggy leaned over to take a look, and a smile also crossed her lips. "I'm sure," Sheldon replied confidently, without checking his calculations immediately. When did a driver get to judge a scientist? Locke smiled, but said nothing. After a few seconds of staring at each other, his gaze made Sheldon even more nervous. Finally, little Sheldon couldn't help but look down at his notes and mentally check his calculations. For a genius like him, calculations that would take a normal person a long time with a calculator were a snap for him, just as Locke had spotted the flaw in Sheldon's calculations at a glance. Just a few seconds later, Sheldon's face began to twitch unnaturally. "I wonder if the scientist needs the driver's advice now," Locke observed the little Sheldon's expression. His words were immediately contradicted. Shame on him. Little Sheldon grabbed the suitcase he was using as a backpack, and ran out of the classroom. "Looks like he saw it," Peggy said with a smile. She had also noticed Sheldon's problem, a minor oversight that everyone makes occasionally, but seeing Sheldon's reaction made her feel involuntarily happy. Confirming the mission was accomplished, Locke shrugged and took Peggy's hand. "Okay, the farce is over. We should go home." "That Sheldon is really interesting," Peggy said with a smile from the back seat on the way back. Indeed, recalling Sheldon's final, unbearable rush to the bathroom, Locke felt his earlier frustration dissipate. No wonder Leonard and the others on The Big Bang Theory, whenever they had the opportunity to antagonize Sheldon, would unconsciously smile. Perhaps a few encounters would teach Sheldon that cleverness is not enough, that nothing is absolutely perfect, and that there will always be someone smarter in this world. Locke was trying to help Sheldon gain social experience, not to make him cry for entertainment. Chapter 18, Enmity Between Girlfriends. After chatting about Sheldon for a while, Peggy invited him, "Would you like to come to my house for dinner tonight?" Having known Peggy for over 6 months, his relationship with her family had grown stronger. Initially, Linda would occasionally invite Rocco to her house for dinner, so that Rocco could look after Peggy at school. Over time, Barry and Linda's impression of Rocco grew stronger, thanks to his high emotional intelligence, his excellent qualities, and his ability to offer helpful suggestions and small assistance. They both developed a close friendship. Barry was a dentist, and while his income wasn't as high as those of surgeons earning millions annually, it was still a good one, and he had plenty of free time. By chance, he learned that Rocco also invested in stocks, and the two gradually began chatting about the subject. Barry even took Rocco's advice, and while his investments had their ups and downs, he still made a good profit overall, with steady returns. As a result, he almost had dinner at Peggy's house every week, becoming like half a family member. "No, I'm busy." This time, Locke declined Peggy's invitation. "Are you going out with some girl?" Peggy quickly guessed what Locke was up to. "That's none of your business, Mandy, Karen, or Jennifer," Peggy asked, still fascinated. "I told you it's none of your business. You know I don't care about these things, but my sister Erica is really interested in all sorts of news about you and asks me about it from time to time," Peggy said with a hint of sarcasm. "Especially since she found out you've started to take an interest in girls." Peggy's sister Erica, unlike Peggy, attended a public high school. It wasn't that Barry couldn't afford to send his daughter to private high school, but Erica was a complete academic failure. Like most American girls her age, Erica enjoyed music, fashionable clothes, and all sorts of fun things to do, but she had no interest in studying and her grades were always at the bottom. Erica struggled to adapt to the strict rules of private high school and showed no interest in her studies. Eventually, she was expelled due to various issues, forcing Barry and Linda to send her to public high school. After overhearing Peggy mention that Locke had been having affairs with girls at school, Erica, already drawn to his handsome looks, once again considered hooking up with Locke. Locke remained silent. He had no feelings for Erica. Firstly, she didn't meet his standards, and secondly, he didn't want to complicate his relationship with the Swanson family. Finally, he didn't want to discuss this with a 10-year-old girl. After dropping Peggy off, Locke turned in a different direction, not to school, but to Jennifer's house. Every time he saw Jennifer, her long, straight legs reminded him of Transformers. It was only because the Chevrolet Camaro hadn't been released yet, otherwise Locke thought he could get one and go for a drive with Jennifer, experiencing the joys of being a Transformer hero. Of course, Locke had experienced riding in a pickup truck before, even leaving high-heeled shoe prints on its roof. This was largely due to the unique culture of Texas. The most popular car in Texas isn't a stable sedan, but a variety of pickup trucks. Locke even bought a used pickup truck. The Lone Star State isn't just known for its muscle cars, cowboy culture is also prevalent. Horseback riding is a common sight on the city's roads, allowing Locke to acquire a riding skill. Jennifer comes from a modest family. Her mother died young, and her father, a car modification tinkerer, has a modest reputation and a modest income, making them considered middle class. This is one reason why, despite her somewhat superior appearance and figure to Mandy, she remains Mandy's best friend and close friend. Influenced by her father, Jennifer loves cars, especially muscle cars. She's now become increasingly interested in Transformers, especially Optimus Prime and Megatron, and she constantly discusses them whenever she's with Locke. After the soul-shaking sound finally died down, Jennifer quietly leaned against Locke's chest. After a moment, Locke spoke first. "I heard you and Mandy had a falling out recently." Jennifer shuddered, feigning indifference. "We only have less than 2 months until graduation. There must be something else." "I heard you've been getting close to Abby, the girl Mandy dislikes the most." Abby was Mandy's neighbor, and their feud had been going on since childhood. Abby's family was wealthier than Mandy's, and her parents doted on her. From a young age, Abby often received better gifts than Mandy, which made Mandy jealous and her most disliked person. Despite her wealth, Abby was introverted, kind, and plain-looking. By middle school, Mandy had established a superiority over the other students, often embarrassing Abby at school. Jennifer, however, was a relatively good-natured person. She became Mandy's best friend to avoid hostility. Her figure was even more perfect than Mandy's, a fact Locke had a firm grasp on. When with Mandy, Jennifer would wear plain, unflattering clothing to minimize her presence. She was careful to flatter Mandy when she spoke, constantly hiding herself beneath her. For such a sophisticated and self-sustaining woman to suddenly fall out with Mandy, there had to be a reason. "My dad's stock investment is in trouble," Jennifer said a moment later, seemingly unrelated. With just a moment's thought, Locke formed a hypothesis. Are you after money? How much would Abby's father be willing to give you? According to Locke, Jennifer had always hoped to attend the University of Los Angeles. However, American universities are very expensive, and the cost of private high school tuition had always left Jennifer's father with little money to save, barely enough to cover a portion of her tuition. Jennifer's grades were merely excellent, not top tier, making scholarships impossible. Consequently, Jennifer worried about the cost of college. In his previous life, Locke had heard many people say that American parents abandon their children once they reach adulthood, leaving them to fend for themselves, taking out loans for college and working to pay for living expenses. This wasn't actually the case. Just like in the East, normal American families provide their children with whatever support they can, including tuition. While student loans exist in the U.S., graduating from college saddled with a crushing debt is no easy feat. Take Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, for example. He'd been paying off student loans for over 20 years, a debt comparable to a mortgage in the East. Now that Jennifer's father had a failed stock investment, the expected college fund was undoubtedly in serious trouble. Given Abby's doting father's affection for her, it wasn't surprising that he'd spend what he considered a paltry sum to help a girl who was constantly being bullied at school. He's willing to help me with my first year's tuition, Jennifer said. All I need is for me to be Abby's friend until graduation and give her a wonderful high school experience. The University of Los Angeles is a public university, and while tuition isn't as high as private universities, it's still typically around $10,000 to $20,000 a year. This was still a significant sum in the 1980s and 1990s, a small amount for Abby's father, but it was something Jennifer desperately needed. It was this significant sum that convinced Jennifer to take the risk. Mandy's got a lot on her plate. If there's anything she's really struggling with, I might be able to help. I've been with Mandy for years and know how to handle her better than you do. Besides, I spoke to Ms. Lisa from the admissions committee and was able to get an offer from the University of Los Angeles soon. I'm staying here now to fulfill Abby's father's wish and give Abby a happy ending to her high school years. The two didn't discuss the matter further. Since Jennifer could handle it herself, Locke wouldn't interfere. After all, their relationship wasn't that deep yet. Jennifer and Mandy claimed to be best friends, but in reality, they were Mandy's lackeys, a form of self-protection Jennifer had adopted during high school. In Locke's opinion, it is also a good thing for Jennifer to leave the bad role model. She had already formed the values of the East in her previous life. Even though they had ridden rockets together from time to time, it did not mean that Locke thought Mandy was a good girl worthy of being friends. Chapter 19 Earn some pocket money. Mr. Locke, welcome back. The hotel receptionist smiled sweetly and warmly at Locke, an old acquaintance. She glanced at Jennifer, who seemed to have just stepped out of the shower and whose steps were unsteady. She then felt a surge of envy at Locke's handsome face. She deftly took Locke's card, swiped it, and handed the bill to Locke. Glancing at the bill, a series of calculations quickly emerged in his mind, and he realized he had very little pocket money left. Since his successful lottery math calculation, Locke had attempted it 4 times, succeeding 3 times and failing once. The failure wasn't due to a flaw in Locke's calculations. After the results came in, Locke rechecked the results and later compared them with the lottery's previous draw records. He concluded that the other party was using a video recording scheme to defraud him, causing Locke's thousands of dollars to go down the drain. After figuring it out, Locke didn't retaliate personally. Instead, he stayed behind the scenes and distributed his findings to various media outlets. The news spread, and the owner of the lottery suffered a significant loss, causing a minor stir in the Texas lottery industry. But none of this mattered to Locke. This failure had alerted him, and he finally curbed his greed and stopped trying to exploit the lottery. The money he'd earned from the first 3 rounds had been invested in a financial account, leaving Locke with $15,000. This wasn't a small sum, and under normal circumstances, it was more than enough for daily expenses. But the losses from his last lottery investment, the need to buy necessary scientific books every few days, the cost of improving his lifestyle through clothing and restaurants, and the occasional hotel room bill had reduced Locke's funds to less than a third. This wasn't enough to sustain him for the next year, and he didn't want to withdraw his funds from the financial markets, so he had to find another way. Las Vegas, nestled on the edge of the Nevada desert, was once a barren wasteland. But when its administrators legalized gambling, A bill enticed a flood of investors to build casinos and hotels. Thanks to the influx of gamblers, Las Vegas transformed from a humble, rundown village into a vast metropolitan area in less than a decade. As Las Vegas develops, it will move beyond gambling and develop tourism, shopping, and vacation attractions, earning it the title of entertainment capital of the world and marriage capital. Even in the future, the majority of visitors to Las Vegas each year will come for shopping and dining, while those specifically seeking gambling will be a minority. Gambling still reigns supreme in Las Vegas. If you're broke and have only a few dollars left, you might find a new lease of life here. If you have more money than you can spend, you might even experience the carefree lifestyle of a homeless person. It's a world of hell and heaven. Concerned that his remaining funds won't be enough to maintain his current high-quality lifestyle for the next year, Locke has traveled 2,000 kilometers to this place, hoping to find a new lease of life. It's easy to go from frugality to luxury, but difficult to return to frugality. Occasionally, quests from Peggy and Sheldon will spawn, increasing potential points at an even faster rate than before, allowing Locke to invest more in attributes beyond intelligence. His all-around improvement in physical fitness also led to a significant increase in his food consumption. The daily intake of more nutritious food and the increased number of scientific books were more than Mandy's meager weekly tuition could compensate for. While ordinary people rely on luck to rise from the ashes, Locke relied on mathematics and science. Upon arriving at his destination, Locke booked a room at an apartment hotel and settled in before exploring the casinos. Las Vegas is truly a city that never sleeps. After putting down his luggage, resting briefly, and showering, Locke left the hotel and strolled down the Las Vegas Strip. This strip is dotted with numerous hotel casinos. Tycoons from across the United States and even global investors have flocked to Las Vegas to build casinos, bringing the total number of casinos, large and small, to over 200. After selecting a medium-sized casino, Locke headed straight to the casino's exchange counter, exchanged $3,000 in chips, and began to explore the casino floor. Slot machines, roulette, baccarat, blackjack, and other classic gambling games were all available. A large crowd, including many elderly people, gathered near the slot machines. Seeing these elderly people, Locke couldn't help but smile, the sight reminding him of little Sheldon's grandmother. This carefree old lady has a serious gambling addiction, frequently visiting casinos and often not stopping until she's lost everything. As a longtime gambler, Sheldon's grandmother has often found herself in situations where she wants to gamble but lacks the money, often resorting to loans. Loan sharks are a byproduct of casinos, like inseparable acquaintances. Because of her frequent borrowing, Sheldon's grandmother and the moneylenders are familiar acquaintances. In the series, Sheldon's mother, Mary, constantly worries about being taken away by the moneylenders for not being able to repay. This worry is not unfounded. In the TV series, the debt collectors are somewhat helpless when they see Sheldon's grandmother. Collecting the debt from this accommodating gambler is a challenge, but only because the amount doesn't warrant extraordinary measures. After all, Sheldon's grandmother is experienced and shrewd, and the debts she owes are manageable. The debt collectors know they can always collect the money, otherwise, they'd be in a different boat. Many of the elderly men and women here, like Sheldon's grandmother, were veteran gamblers. Each of them, clutching large paper cups for coins, watched the patrons playing the slot machines as if they were prey. If a longtime player stood up to leave, they would rush to grab their spot. These elderly players were just as agile and nimble as the younger ones, sometimes even arguing over a seat. This was actually a unique way to increase their odds of winning. According to the system, if someone hasn't won a slot machine for a while, then taking over again at that point has a much higher chance of winning the jackpot. The casinos knew this, since they were the ones who programmed the machines. But they didn't care. Even with this little trick, as long as gamblers kept playing, the casinos would still profit. It was even possible that this trick was invented by the casinos themselves. These slot machines were programmed long ago, even designed to cater to human psychology, encouraging occasional wins to make people feel good, but in reality, they were quietly emptying their wallets. After watching for a while, Locke, understanding the underlying principles, simply ignored the slot machines. His target was the classic, extremely popular game in Europe and America, blackjack. He had seen the movie Blackjack in a previous life. In this game, the gambler and the dealer are opponents. The dealer initially deals 2 cards, with face cards greater than 10 counting as 10. The gambler can then choose to draw, stand, or raise based on their score. The player closest to 21 wins, while those over 21 lose. For most people, this is a game of luck and psychology, but for math experts, it's a test of memory and mathematical ability. The cards dealt represent the past, while those yet to be dealt represent the future. In theory, someone with an exceptional memory and mental arithmetic skills could successfully count the cards. However, the complexity and difficulty involved far exceeds what most people imagine. In typical casinos, blackjack is dealt with 4 decks of cards. Excluding the jokers, the deck totals 208 cards. The order of these cards, after shuffling, is naturally unpredictable and subject to constant change. Math experts who want to perform rapid mental arithmetic need to calculate all possible points for themselves and their opponent based on the cards already dealt and the remaining cards, thereby deriving their odds of winning the current hand. The more data samples there are and the fewer cards remaining, the more accurate their calculations become. They can place large bets to win when their odds are high, and give up when their odds are low. This is a game only a few geniuses can master. For example, Sheldon, who possesses a high-definition image memory, once attempted to use his calculations to win money in Las Vegas casinos. However, Sheldon's mental fortitude wasn't up to par. He casually observed the situation with a notebook in hand, drawing attention. Even if his calculations were correct, they were easily spotted by the casino before he could place his bet, and he was escorted out by security. Furthermore, when luck is bad, even if you calculate a 99% chance of winning, placing a large bet still carries the risk of a low probability event. Therefore, the amount of the bet must be carefully considered, and it's best not to go all in. However, using this method, as long as it is operated properly, overall victory is certain. This is what Locke needs to do now. With his IQ now increased to 197 points, he is sure to earn some pocket money for himself. Chapter 20 Alice Tang Wei. Wow, win again, amazing, incredible. At some point, a nearby blackjack table began to swarm with people. Occasional exclamations of surprise filled the air, drawing the attention of the dealer dealing the cards to Locke. From what the onlookers were saying, one gambler had won in nearly $30,000 with $1,000, and most of the nearby gamblers had gathered around him. In casinos, following the winning strategy is universally acknowledged. After all, when luck strikes, it's truly unstoppable. Following the winning strategy at this point is a sure win, what some call riding on a lucky break. However, there's a prerequisite, controlling one's greed and knowing when to withdraw. If you keep going this way, even the best luck will eventually wear thin, and the situation will reverse, potentially leading to complete loss. The dealer, having seen this happen many times, simply sighed inwardly at his good fortune. Then, noticing Locke sitting motionless, he couldn't help but ask, "Sir, wouldn't you like to join us for a couple of rounds?" "No, I'm actually having quite a good day," Locke said with a smile. Indeed, the dealer nodded in agreement, glancing at the chips in Locke's hand. The initial $1,000 had grown to over $4,000. That's about it. After another $300 came in, Locke chose not to continue. Instead, he tossed a chip to the dealer as a tip, collected his haul, and left. Seeing Locke not linger and opting to exchange chips, the dealer thought he was a smart man, someone who knew when to quit. After cashing in his chips, Locke moved on to another medium-sized casino, another way to avoid attracting attention. He'd win a portion of his winnings at each casino, then move on to another, trying to stay as long as possible. He wasn't particularly interested in gambling, and this time he was just trying to earn a living, not planning to come often and delay his studies and skills. On his first night, Locke played several casinos. He retired to his room for a morning rest before moving on to a luxury hotel. After lunch, he changed his outfit from head to toe at a nearby mall, leaving behind his receipts. These items were tax-deductible, and Locke would need them when he prepared to leave Las Vegas. He had no intention of risking a tax bill by carrying around piles of cash, as the gang in the movie Blackjack did. The tax on winnings here was indeed staggering, nearly 50%, but for Locke, the small savings were far from enough to justify the risk of IRS trouble. Leaving the mall, Locke had dressed in high-end brands and had the rest of his purchases delivered to his hotel room. He arrived at the magnificent Caesar's Palace. After a stroll through the lobby, Locke arrived at the VIP area. The place was noticeably more upscale, and feeling confident, Locke relaxed. Large casinos were more skilled at preventing cheating, so he decided to play casually and lose a little, So he sat down at a baccarat table and placed his chips. After the dealer dealt the cards, he enthusiastically imitated the classic card-reading technique he'd seen in gambling movies in his previous life, slowly revealing the cards and furtively scanning them with his eyes. This feeling of pure luck, without any calculations, is quite enjoyable to experience occasionally. At that moment, a fragrant breeze blew in, followed by a pleasant female voice. 3 sides, top, top. It was the classic call. As Locke finally flipped the cards, he unexpectedly won the hand. He turned his head and saw a young, beautiful woman standing next to him, dressed in a tight blazer and a mini red skirt. He couldn't help but look in surprise. Beautiful women were not uncommon at Caesar's palace. While he couldn't say he had seen them all, he had met top-tier beauties and had long since mastered the art of keeping his composure. He was struck by the familiarity of the woman beside him, reminding him of when Giagia and BJ meet Seattle. And judging by her youthful appearance, she couldn't be more than 20 years old. Interest piqued, Locke remained impassive. After the dealer pushed the winning chip over, he casually handed her a 100-yuan chip. The woman's eyes flashed with delight, and she took it with a certain familiarity. Judging by the woman's attire, Locke was certain she was the casino's hostess, or a gambling companion who accompanied gamblers to earn tips. For a single gambler, having a woman by his side, constantly calling out for him, engaging him in intimate interactions, and even offering him the chance to invite him to a follow-up event afterward, was truly a wonderful experience. Gamblers' excitement naturally intensified, and with a woman's presence, their vanity took over, leading them to gamble even more, naturally increasing the casino's profits. After all, 9 out of 10 gambling matches are lost. Becoming a gambling companion required skill. Besides beauty, one must also be familiar with the various gambling situations, able to grasp the gambler's psychology, stimulate their gambling spirit, and calm their nerves when they lost. Intrigued, Locke didn't count his cards, figuring that if his recent winnings ran out, he would just play blackjack and complete his planned game. The female hostess remained behind him, helping him call his cards whenever he looked at them. To Locke's surprise, his luck improved considerably over the next period. Within a short time, the $10,000 he'd exchanged for chips had more than doubled, effectively completing his initial plan. Since this was the case, Locke didn't bother counting cards. He decided to quit while he was ahead and prepared to leave the table. Luck was fleeting, after all. The beautiful PR was still following Locke. Locke turned and examined her, then smiled and extended his hand. "Locke Lee, my name is Alice," she said, shaking Locke's hand. "What's your Chinese name, your real name?" Locke switched to Chinese. Tang Wei, the PR was surprised by Locke's excellent Chinese. She paused for a moment before offering a different name. "From Hangzhou." "How did you tell? There's heaven above, and Suzhou and Hangzhou below." "Hangzhou is famous for its beautiful women," Locke smiled. "Why did you come to America?" "Studying abroad on government funding." "No, my father is here. He brought me here." "You must have been here quite a while." "What do you think? America isn't paradise after all." "Why do you say that? Otherwise, why would you work here instead of going to school?" Locke said with a smile. Tang Wei smiled and said, "I've already received an offer from Columbia University. I'm here part-time to earn tuition money, after all, it's so expensive." "Yeah," Locke nodded in understanding. "You think so too," Tang Wei teased. "The tuition is expensive, but that's for me. For someone as rich as you, it's just like buying a car, right? The landlord doesn't have any extra food." Locke shrugged. "Not explaining much?" "Still want to play?" Tang Wei suggested. "You're lucky today. You'll definitely win a lot if you keep playing." As expected, Locke knew that casinos have a perfect grasp of human nature. As long as there's a win, the female PR will definitely encourage gamblers to keep playing, so they can get a lot of tips. The invitation of a beautiful woman, coupled with the psychological pressure of constant winnings, can lower one's guard. But there's no such thing as constant winning. Luck can fluctuate, and if you keep playing, the casino will ultimately be the winner. If he wanted to avoid losing, he had to switch to a more familiar arena. "Then I'll try blackjack. It's what I'm best at. People call me the Little Prince of Blackjack." Back then, the legend of the gambler winning the game wasn't widespread yet. Card counting was still a minority, and most people worked in teams. With a female PR nearby, teaming up was impossible. As long as Locke managed to control his game, the casino would at most think he was just lucky. A talent like him, capable of running a team on his own, was incredibly rare, and there weren't many in the entire US. But he'd won so much this time that he probably wouldn't be able to come to this casino for a while, lest he be targeted. Locke didn't mind. He was just supplementing his pocket money. He hadn't planned on making it a long-term career, let alone coming every weekend like he did in blackjack. Besides, it was only 1990, not 10 years later, when casinos would spend a fortune on systems that, through surveillance and computers, could automatically detect cheaters and card counters based on facial expressions and irregularities at the table. Even if they come here every week, wouldn't they change a few casinos? There are so many casinos in Las Vegas. The team in the movie can fleece each one. How can they not be targeted? Chapter 21 Call and Listen. Following Locke to the blackjack table, Tang Wei secretly observed his expression. After arriving in America, she realized it wasn't a paradise. Her father was a compulsive gambler, and after years of following him, as a clever girl, she could already discern between a low roller, a hardcore gambler, and a high roller. Locke's newly updated outfit, coupled with his confident demeanor, immediately categorized him as a high roller. Especially since he was young and handsome, she immediately approached him. Furthermore, he spoke Chinese well and seemed to have a good impression of Chinese people, making him her ideal target. She had originally come to the United States, expecting a good life, but her compulsive gambling father proved unreliable, not only unable to care for her but also hindering her progress. She had to rely on herself for everything. Over the past few years, relying on her own intelligence and hard work, she earned good grades in high school and was admitted to a prestigious public university in the U.S. However, tuition at American universities was prohibitively expensive, and 4 years of studying there was a crushing burden. Therefore, she had to work part-time, intending to use the time between now and registering for school to earn as much tuition as possible. Once she finished college, she would at least be able to escape her current low-class fate. To Tang Wei's surprise, Locke's luck was truly good today. While not as dominant as before, she continued to win more than she lost at blackjack, and tips continued to trickle in. Unnoticed, Locke's stack had doubled again, and he didn't seem particularly excited, as if it was just a small amount of money, unconcerned. This only confirmed to Tang Wei that he had caught a big fish. Meanwhile, Locke quadrupled his 10,000 yuan stake, winning 30,000 yuan, and then stopped playing. He believed he had probably already attracted the attention of the casino, and if he continued, he might get into trouble. It was better to stop. After collecting the chips, Locke handed Tang Wei another $100 chip. "Would you like to have a cup of coffee with me?" The girl's figure, while not as explosive as the American girls, was just right, with delicate and familiar features and skin as radiant as white jade. This made him think, since they were out for fun, they might as well relax. Tang Wei didn't respond. Seeing her hesitation, Locke smiled faintly. "It's still early. Let's go to the mall first and return later." Before Tang Wei could refuse, Locke took her hand and led them out. Tang Wei struggled slightly, but quickly followed Locke out of the casino and onto the street outside. Night had already fallen, marking the beginning of the bustling life of this city that never sleeps. The two of them went to a nearby mall, where Locke was in the Chanel store. "Hello, how can I help you?" the salesperson asked professionally as Locke led Tang Wei in. "Pick out some suitable clothes, shoes, and bags for her," Locke was confident after his recent success at Caesar's Palace. "Okay, miss, please follow me." The saleswoman glanced at Locke's attire and, knowing he was a wealthy man, saw an opportunity. She expertly began introducing the store's products to Tang Wei. Locke then sat down in the lounge area, where coffee and snacks were quickly served. At the saleswoman's recommendation, Tang Wei quickly changed into a fitted long dress and a pair of beige high heels, then stood in front of the mirror. "Miss, you are absolutely beautiful." The saleswoman's well-placed compliment gently tipped the scales in Tang Wei's heart. The attentive service here was something she had previously only dreamed of, and the saleswoman's envious gaze only served to satisfy her vanity. "How do you like it?" "Do you like it?" Locke moved up behind Tang Wei and gently embraced her waist. "Yes." After a slight struggle that proved fruitless, Tang Wei submissively leaned into Locke's embrace. "Then let's buy them all, and then see if there's anything else suitable for everyday wear," Locke said with a smile. "I'm going to dress you up nicely today." After shopping at the mall for over an hour, the two returned to their hotel room. Setting down their purchases, Locke opened a bottle of red wine. "Want a drink?" Tang Wei didn't refuse again. He took the glass from Locke's hand, and the two sat on the sofa and chatted. The room gradually filled with a pink, ambiguous atmosphere. Locke wasn't the type to rush into sex. Instead, he seemed gentle and appropriate at this moment. After all, a little consideration was necessary. In this atmosphere, Tang Wei's initial nervousness gradually eased, a captivating smile spreading across his face. His gaze towards Locke gradually became more shy and charming. The two drank and talked for a long time, and before they knew it, half the bottle of wine was gone. Locke turned on the music, put down his glass, and walked over to Tang Wei. "Beautiful lady, may I ask you for a dance?" Tang Wei placed his delicate, smooth hand on Locke's. To the melodious music, the two danced gracefully, the distance between them gradually closing. By this time, Tang Wei's resistance was almost gone. Ever since arriving in America, she had been forced to rely on herself for everything because of her father's unreliability. She had always struggled to survive with a strong and independent attitude, and could only suppress the fatigue and grievances in her heart. At this moment, facing Locke's tenderness, she couldn't help but feel a fluttering heart. Until the end of the song, their eyes met. She opened her charming lips to speak, but the next second, her lips were blocked, and only a woo-woo-woo sound came out. A long night began. It was not until near noon the next day that Tang Wei slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes, she saw Locke writing something at a table by the window. She sat up, and as the quilt slid down, her beautiful figure was exposed to the sun. "Are you awake?" Hearing the noise behind him, Locke turned and looked at her. "How did you sleep last night?" "Very well." She didn't refuse his embrace as he stood up and came to the bedside. She leaned against his chest, and after a moment, she said, "I need money for college." After yesterday's infatuation, Tang Wei's rationality gradually returned. Having spent a few years in the casinos, she had become more thoughtful and less naive than the average girl. Her past experiences had made her more rational. She wasn't like some of the beautiful girls in Las Vegas who only thought about hooking up with a rich man and enjoying a life of luxury. Most of those rich men were just playing around. Even if they had a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting married, the relationship wouldn't last. They might get bored at any moment. It was better to seize the opportunity to enhance her own value. A woman must have her own career and not rely entirely on a man. Tang Wei believed in herself more. She thought Locke was probably some rich kid from somewhere, and there was no chance he'd marry her. Instead, she would take this opportunity to ask Locke to help pay for her college tuition. As long as she could successfully graduate from college, she would have many more options in the future. Even if she left Locke one day, she would be able to live a good life. "So, do you want to recognize me as your sugar daddy?" Locke smiled. "I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to sponsor needy American college students." Locke didn't refuse. With his current ability, the $10,000 or $20,000 annual tuition for college was no problem. In addition, last night was the first time for this girl, which made Locke, with his Eastern-style thoughts, even more possessive. Without hesitation, he put her down again and said, "Then call out to me first." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22. It's absolutely impossible to be friends. After 2 more days in Las Vegas, Locke finally returned to Dallas alone. With 2 months left until high school graduation, Tang Wei, or rather Alice, had quit her part-time job as a casino hostess. She still had a lot of things to attend to at school and needed to prepare for Columbia University. After returning to school, Locke first checked in with her teacher to check in, then resumed her studies. "Where have you been these past few days?" Lip couldn't help but ask in the cafeteria. "I went out to relax for a few days." "Going out? I thought you were always a study freak," Lip said, a little surprised. "I'm not a robot either. I need to relax once in a while." Locke rolled his eyes at Lip. "Who told you to be either studying or on your way to the library all day?" Lip was curious. "Where have you been? Have you met any new friends?" He even emphasized the word new friends, and judging by Lip's expression, Locke could tell what he was thinking. He didn't answer Lip's question. Locke had no intention of advertising his money-making experience in Las Vegas. He just wanted the added dollars in his bank account to be tangible. Seeing Locke didn't answer, Lip pressed him a few more times before finally giving up. He knew it was pointless to ask anything Locke didn't want to say. At this point, Peggy spoke up. "Locke, do you remember Sheldon, the troublemaker we met in Dr. Sturgis's class?" "Troublemaker? That's a pretty accurate term," Peggy said with a smile. After class that day, Sheldon's mother wanted to invite our family to their house for the weekend. "Do you want to go?" "You want to go? My mom thinks it'd be great to meet a genius my age, and I think he's quite interesting," Peggy said. "Then let's go together." The last time they met Sheldon, Locke had brought a mission, so even though Locke thought Sheldon was troublesome, his potential points were still very attractive. "Okay, I'll tell Mom when I get home." "Who is this Sheldon you're talking about?" Lip couldn't help but ask. "He's a genius with an IQ of 187. He's the same age as Peggy, and both are super geniuses," Locke said. "Do you want to meet him?" "Forget it," Lip glanced at Peggy. He had been ridiculed by Peggy about his IQ many times, and he had no interest in meeting a genius like Peggy. Whatever, Locke knew that Lip probably had no interest in Sheldon, so he didn't care much. "By the way, how are you and Lily doing?" "Don't say it. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't believe it." "Lily cheated on me while I wasn't paying attention," Lip said subconsciously, thinking of what he saw yesterday. "Lily didn't cheat on you," Peggy teased with a smile. "You two have absolutely no relationship. She barely notices you." "How many words has she spoken to you since the start of school?" Lip immediately retorted. "What do you mean by no relationship?" "It's just that things are progressing slowly. Even my mom knows about our relationship, and she's very supportive." "Locke, Peggy." This excuse was incredible. Locke glanced at Lip and asked Peggy, "Does Lily have a boyfriend?" "That guy," Peggy said with a glance. Following Peggy's gaze, Locke quickly spotted the boy sitting with Lily for dinner. "So it's Spencer. I remember he's been openly pursuing Lily for a while," Locke said to Lip with a smile. "If it's really like what you said, why don't you go up and stop them?" "Yeah," Peggy echoed, looking at Lip with a playful look. "Do you think you like this?" "Of course not. Of course I have to stop them. I'm going to stop them now." Lip felt that he was being greatly ridiculed, and he couldn't stand it. He stood up suddenly and walked over there. "It seems like there's something interesting to watch," Peggy said. "What do you think Lip will do? Will they fight?" "Don't be kidding." Locke didn't care. If Lip had that courage, he wouldn't be single now. Sure enough, Lip's steps became slower and slower. Before he even reached them, he turned around and quickly returned to his seat. Facing the two people's watching eyes, he remained silent. After a while, to ease the awkwardness, Locke took the initiative and said, "I wonder what Spencer's been eating?" "He's quite big." "That's right." Lip seemed to have grasped at straws. "Can you imagine? He's a head taller than me." He finally mustered up the courage to walk over, just in time to see Spencer standing up to leave. The look in his eyes, which required him to look up to meet his gaze, made him retreat with a sense of relief. "Maybe you could try Ivy. I think she seems to like you." "No way," Lip said firmly. "There's no way we'd be together." Ivy was also a girl, relatively ordinary looking. She had recently taken a liking to Lip and expressed interest in him, but Lip was completely disgusted by this 100-kilogram beauty. Locke suspected that Lip would eventually give in. After all, for someone like Lip, having a girlfriend was better than being single. It was like Howard and Rajesh from The Big Bang Theory. They looked down on the 300-kilogram Sailor Moon and expressed disdain, but when they met her, they still enjoyed it wholeheartedly. At night, at little Sheldon's house. "Shelly, guess who's coming to visit us this weekend?" As soon as little Sheldon got home, he heard his mother, Mary, excitedly say to him, "Your new friend, Peggy. Isn't she happy?" "Peggy isn't my friend." Recalling what happened a few days ago, little Sheldon's face showed a look of disgust. "What?" Sheldon's answer was a little surprising, and Mary was startled. "But I heard that Peggy met you when you were in Dr. John Sturgis's class." "We knew each other," little Sheldon said expressionlessly, thinking back to what happened that day. "But we were just in class together. In that sense, we could barely be considered classmates, but there's no way she and I are friends." "Don't be so rude. Maybe once you get to know her better, you'll like her and become friends." "I heard she's a genius like you." Mary, who had heard some of the situation from Sheldon's grandmother, quickly guessed the reason, but she really wanted Peggy and her family to come visit. After all, since she discovered little Sheldon's specialness, this was the first time she had met a similar special family, and she was eager to discuss the education of special children with Peggy's parents. But little Sheldon's response was very cold. "I don't like her." and I don't plan to like her. Besides, I already have a friend like Dan, and I don't need more friends. Mary was now sure that what her mother Connie said was right. Peggy was indeed very smart, otherwise Sheldon wouldn't have such a big reaction. However, she had finally made an appointment with the Swansons, and seeing Sheldon's appearance, she could only choose a roundabout way. First, she complained to Sheldon at school that she had no friends. This time, she invited the Swansons in the hope of making friends with Peggy's mother, and then said that if little Sheldon really didn't want to, she wouldn't force it. Faced with his mother's expectant eyes, little Sheldon, as a mama's boy, couldn't help but waver and said that he would consider it. Chapter 23 Go outside the house. On a weekend afternoon, Locke and the Swanson family drove to Sheldon's house to visit. By the way, what are your plans? What are you going to do with little Sheldon? Locke asked Peggy casually. I don't have any plans. I'll see what he has prepared. It might be fun. Although Peggy and Locke got along well at school, they were not playmates of the same age. As a super genius, she couldn't stand stupid earthlings most of the time, but her high emotional intelligence made her not show it obviously. Sheldon's appearance gave Peggy a little surprise, so she was also looking forward to meeting Sheldon. Maybe you can visit his little train, Locke said. Did you know Sheldon before? Peggy heard something from Locke's words. The orphanage I used to stay at was right in Sheldon's town. Sheldon was pretty famous there, and I'd heard a lot of gossip about him, not to mention Sheldon was so weak that even chickens would chase him, Locke said. The funniest thing is, little Sheldon was bullied by a little neighbor girl 3 years his junior. Really? Bullied by a little girl 3 years his junior? Peggy peeked. Yet, he even took judo lessons for a while because of it. Too bad, Locke shrugged. He'd actually found this scene hilarious when he'd first seen it on TV. Gossiping about little Sheldon all the way, the group arrived at the Cooper residence. The doorbell rang, and Mary happily opened the door. Welcome, everyone. Mary, clearly dressed to the nines, a bright smile on her face, ushered the group inside, calling out, Shelley, they're here. Meanwhile, in his own room, little Sheldon frantically adjusted his beloved bow tie in the mirror, his heart filled with anxiety. He was most proud of his exceptional intelligence, a talent he couldn't match. He believed that aside from scientific giants like Einstein, Newton, and Hawking, no one on Earth could truly connect with him. However, this pride was shattered a few days ago when he met Peggy. The key was Peggy. Locke was significantly older than he, which gave Sheldon some comfort. Locke wasn't the youngest super genius, but Peggy, a month younger, often left him speechless and outperformed him in class. It's time to start, Mary called out. Young Sheldon suppressed his frustration, took a deep breath, held his head high, and walked into the living room with a stiff expression. Hi, Sheldon, Peggy said, giving him a friendly hug. After a brief introduction, Mary and her husband sat down with the Swansons in the living room to chat. Erica was taken to the backyard by George and Michelle, while Locke and Peggy went to Sheldon's room. Since we're going to be spending a few hours together, I've listed some activities to keep us occupied. Little Sheldon remained expressionless throughout, as if reading from a script. We'll start by touring my room, then playing board games. If there's time, you can look at my model trains, but you're absolutely not allowed to touch them. I didn't expect it to be similar to what Locke said. After confirming little Sheldon's attitude, Peggy felt a little bored and glanced at Locke standing next to her. She really wanted to be friends with little Sheldon, but little Sheldon was just not very likable. Fortunately, after the boring introductions, little Sheldon suggested playing chess, and the two of them started chatting while playing chess. Do you really believe in the multiverse theory? Absolutely. It's the most beautiful interpretation of quantum mechanics. So, do you really think there are infinite parallel universes? Stephen Hawking believes it, so I do too. If there are indeed infinite parallel universes, then I think this theory is equally foolish in all of them. Peggy played chess while Sheldon chatted. Feeling a bit bored, Locke couldn't help but interject, come to think I do believe in the existence of parallel universes. Otherwise, how can I explain my own rebirth? Locke said the latter part in his mind, and the originally angry Sheldon was pleased to hear it. Thank you, but why are you still in high school? Although Sheldon secretly believed that Locke's IQ was inferior to his, he was able to quickly recognize and correct his momentary oversight, clearly not just any stupid earthling. I'm an orphan, and I don't have parents who could have given me the opportunity to skip a grade, Locke said to Peggy. That's a shame, Sheldon nodded, finding Locke's appearance a little more pleasing. At this point, Peggy said, It's fun being with you. Besides Locke, I can't talk about this with anyone else at school. What about you? Same. Do you ever wish you were like everyone else? Peggy asked. Young Sheldon thought for a moment, then shook his head decisively. Not at all. Peggy glanced at Locke with a smile. I really enjoy being smarter than everyone else. Hearing this, young Sheldon suddenly warmed to Peggy, feeling like she and he were on the same page, and his hostility dissipated considerably. Me too, but it didn't last long. Check, Peggy laughed happily. You lose. Haha, it seems I'm the smartest. At this moment, young Sheldon was completely stunned. After losing to Peggy in the university classroom last time, he had done some mental preparation. Due to their different family circumstances, he attended a public high school while Peggy attended a private one. This disparity in resources meant that much knowledge was currently out of reach for him. Books in the United States are extremely expensive, with specialized titles often costing tens or even hundreds of dollars. The difference in educational resources between public and private high schools is most evident in the richness of their library collections. But chess is a test of intelligence. Peggy, a month his junior, beat him and triumphantly declared herself the smartest, much to Sheldon's dismay. Unable to contain his previously suppressed anger, Sheldon finally erupted, flipping the chessboard. Peggy was surprised by his reaction. She glanced at Locke, seeing him watching the show, and then, with a grin, said to Sheldon, "Another game, no problem." Unconvinced, Sheldon glared at Peggy for a moment before agreeing. He truly wasn't convinced. He was a genius, the smartest. But playing chess with emotion had clearly played into Peggy's game, disrupting his composure and affecting his performance. He lost the next game, and this nearly drove Sheldon into a state of withdrawal. Seeing this, Locke was also worried that little Sheldon would explode directly. Having seen The Big Bang Theory, he didn't want to deal with such a Sheldon, so he changed the subject at the right time. Speaking of which, Sheldon, I'm quite interested in your train. How about telling me about it? I don't have time, little Sheldon refused angrily. Glancing at Peggy, Locke shrugged his shoulders, pulled Peggy and said to Sheldon, "It seems you have things to do. Let's go take a look outside the house." Chapter 24 Where is the Godfather? Ha ha ha. Peggy's smile remained as they left the room. It seems your suggestion was a good one. It's really interesting to see Sheldon's angry reaction after he's humiliated you. Locke couldn't tell who had the higher IQ between Sheldon and Peggy, as the system didn't have the ability to view other people's attributes. Peggy's victory stemmed from her subtle manipulation of Sheldon's emotions during the game. After all, chess tests both intelligence and mental toughness. Peggy was constantly engaging Sheldon in conversation, while secretly capturing his pieces. It wasn't surprising that Sheldon's mental toughness wasn't up to par, so it wasn't surprising he lost to Peggy. Outside, Locke saw Erica, George, and Missy throwing stones at an abandoned TV. Peggy rolled her eyes speechlessly, but Locke said, "Nice aim, thank you," replied George, who had just scored. "Why did you guys come out? Sheldon's probably still introverted." Locke shrugged. Introverted? Missy and George were immediately intrigued. "He lost to me at chess and is sulking in his room," Peggy said with a smile. "Excuse me, I have to excuse myself for a moment." Hearing this, Missy could no longer hold back and ran straight home. Growing up with little Sheldon and having to face his contemptuous expressions from time to time, Missy couldn't wait to see him being humiliated. "Wait for me." Little George did the same, just a little slower than Missy, but still moving very quickly. They both ran back to the house. Locke glanced at Erica, who seemed to be expecting something, and quickly changed the subject. "I wonder how Linda and the others are talking. Let's go and listen." Peggy glanced at her sister and Locke, and finally chose to cooperate with Locke. The two chatted as they walked back. "Speaking of which, Peggy, how many college preparatory courses did you choose?" "I have already passed 7. I plan to choose a few more so that I can graduate faster when I go to college," Peggy said. "It seems that you have completed 8 courses. You said before that you were going to choose mathematics. You have completed all the relevant preparatory courses. In your situation, you should be able to graduate quickly and enter college earlier. I still want to enjoy high school life more. As for going to college in the future, I want to complete more preparatory subjects. When I go to college, I don't plan to just sign up for mathematics. I plan to study physics, chemistry, and even biology." American high schools have college preparatory courses. As long as you can pass this part of the preparatory subjects, the grades of these subjects can be used directly when you go to college in the future. Generally speaking, the number of preparatory courses offered by ordinary public high schools is in the single digits, while private high schools typically offer 20 to 30. Of course, the main reason is that completing high school in a normal and orderly manner can earn more quests and potential points. As far as I can remember, Sheldon and Peggy won't graduate until next year. They'll obviously be able to trigger more quests. Locke could indeed start college this year, but he decided to spend an extra year completing quests. The only downside is that Sheldon and he aren't in the same school, which limits their time together and reduces the likelihood of quests. "You have quite a wide range of interests," Peggy asked, unaware of Locke's intentions. "So, you're planning on getting a few more doctorates?" "Yes, I do. I want to learn more about these subjects." Locke opened the door and entered the living room. "By the way, Peggy, which university are you going to?" "I haven't decided yet." Peggy thought for a moment. "I've received offers from over a dozen universities, including Harvard, Yale, Caltech, Princeton, and Columbia. In the United States, education is a huge business, and university education is even more so. For example, Leonard, after graduating from college, found work as an experimental physicist at Caltech, a respectable job, well paid for the middle class. Yet, after working for over a decade, he's still paying off his mortgage. You can imagine how lucrative top universities are. The U.S. regularly ranks universities, and universities rely on their reputation and rankings to attract students. Talented students like Paige are more likely to attract donations from donors and enhance the school's reputation, making them the favorites of all schools. A well-known school can charge exorbitant tuition fees, generating significant profits and attracting numerous university sweethearts. Locke's recent encounter with Alice Tangwitty was a quick fall for him. Besides Locke's inherent charm and attractive appearance, the pressure of university tuition also played a role. In the American TV series How I Met Your Mother, the playboy Barney's favorite hobby is raising money for women at clubs who can't even afford clothes, and he sponsors quite a few university students. Taken together, a gifted student like Peggy, who could bring immense benefits to the school, was naturally sought after, and scholarships and grants poured in. Even Locke had received offers from several universities. Unlike Sheldon, a young prodigy, the universities offering him offers were less prestigious and offered less favorable terms. What? Sheldon, who had also arrived in the living room at some point, overheard the conversation and couldn't help but ask, "Did you get an offer already?" "Yes," Peggy smiled. "Colleges are a two-way street. For talents like us, any top university would be eager to receive an offer. Haven't you received one yet?" "No." Sheldon's face darkened, his lips twitching slightly. He was nearly in tears after a day of continuous setbacks. He had just been humiliated by Peggy, and now the university's early offer was an official confirmation that Peggy was more intelligent than Sheldon. This was unacceptable to his pride. "Don't worry," thinking of the trouble that little Sheldon might cause if he started crying, Locke quickly said, "Maybe those top universities have also invited you, but you just don't know it yet." He likes to see Sheldon get embarrassed, but it's troublesome when Sheldon cries. It's not easy to coax him, especially since he's still a child. "Really?" Little Sheldon suddenly felt expectant and looked at Locke. Of course, Locke glanced at Mary and guessed that this was Sheldon's mother, Mary, who was reluctant to let her young son go to college at this age, so she deliberately concealed it. Noticing that Locke was looking at his mother, little Sheldon also looked at Mary. Well, seeing the look in her little baby's eyes, Mary was also a little embarrassed, but she felt sorry for her baby son. Seeing little Sheldon's aggrieved look, she hesitated and said, "Indeed, some schools have sent invitations. I'll show them to you later." Chapter 25 World Space Science Exposition. The college invitations had caused some minor turmoil in Sheldon's family, but this had also made Peggy more enthusiastic about attending college. She and Locke began discussing where to go. "I'm planning on going to Princeton," Locke announced. "The math department there is top-notch. Barring any unexpected events, I'll apply there next year. I'm quite interested there, too. Maybe I can visit during the summer." Perhaps influenced by Locke, Peggy also showed a keen interest in math. "I just don't know if Mom would be willing to let me go there. After all, it's too far away, and Dad wouldn't likely agree to move to New York. The competition for dentists there is fierce, and the cost is higher." Locke thought for a moment and said, "I'm not sure about that, but if you go to Princeton, you can apply for temporary guardianship. I'm also in school." "That's certainly an option," Peggy said. "I'll talk to Mom about it when I get home," Locke nodded. He wasn't sure what the final outcome would be, but he felt about 60% confident. Peggy's mother, Linda, dotes on her so much that she neglects her husband, Barry, but this isn't absolute. Linda's care for Peggy is definitely not as great as Mary's for young Sheldon. In the latest episodes of the TV series Young Sheldon, after Peggy's parents divorced and Peggy went off to college, Linda found a temporary guardian for her. Before they knew it, the semester was over, and graduation season was approaching for the 12th graders. "Jennifer, look here." Jennifer's father held up a camera and took a picture of him. Not far away was Jennifer's friend, Abby. Her mother walked around Abby, dressed in her graduation gown and cap, taking pictures of her daughter from every angle and occasionally inviting Jennifer to take a photo with her. In the United States, graduation gowns and caps aren't just for college graduates. Graduates of all levels can wear them, though the styles vary slightly. Jennifer stood on the lawn, beaming, striking various poses. Seeing Locke nearby, she quickly invited him to join the photo. "Congratulations. You're about to get into Columbia University, and the tuition problem is solved," Locke said with a smile as he approached Jennifer. "Thank you, too. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to handle Mandy." Jennifer hugged Locke's arm. The two of them pressed tightly together, causing her father's eyes to blaze with hostility towards Locke. Jennifer, Abby, standing nearby, beckoned Jennifer. Locke smiled and separated from Jennifer, then ran to Mandy and Karen, taking photos with them, only to satisfy them. How enviable, Lip, watching Locke being dragged along by the girls for photos, wished he could take their place. "Do you want me to tell Ivy this?" Peggy, who was also watching nearby, said. "No thanks." Lip quickly averted his gaze, glancing around before feeling slightly relieved. As Locke had expected, Lip ultimately failed to resist Ivy's advances. He didn't want to be a pure young, old man. In American high schools, this wasn't a title to be boasted about. It signified a lack of charm. On the contrary, it's the skills honed through countless battles that are truly something to be proud of. After finally escaping the enthusiastic girls, Locke returned to his home. Peggy said impatiently, "Let's get going. Mom's been waiting for us." "I know, let's go," Locke replied, and he and Peggy left the school together. Linda had already been waiting by the car for a while. "Have a safe trip," Lip, who had followed, said goodbye to Locke. "And I hope you have a great vacation too." After saying goodbye to Lip, Locke took the passenger seat. This time, he, Peggy, and Linda were heading to the World Space Exposition. As they drove along, they could see from a distance a massive, life-size model of the Saturn V rocket standing in the plaza in front of the large exhibition hall for tourists. The Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center was the venue for this year's World Space Science Exposition. Driving closer, the main road was lined with temporary exhibition halls, their flags fluttering, welcoming visitors from around the world eager to witness one of humanity's greatest achievements. Locke stood on the far right side of the main thoroughfare, his companion Peggy holding Linda's hand, observing the crowds passing by with a certain boredom. She was wearing a blouse, an indigo plaid skirt, white cotton socks, and a blue curve-brimmed hat. Checking the time, Peggy couldn't help but wonder, why haven't Sheldon and the others arrived yet? "Don't worry, it's not the agreed time yet." Locke glanced at his watch, glanced around, and pointed toward the ticket gate. "Look, aren't they here?" Following Locke's finger, Peggy spotted the Cooper family. "Hey, Linda. Sorry we're late. There was some traffic," George said, greeting and apologizing. "It's okay, Mr. Cooper, the timing's perfect." Linda smiled and dismissed the idea. "Let's go in," little Sheldon excitedly declared. "I can't wait." Sheldon had long heard about the expo and dreamed of seeing it, but the high ticket price kept him from mentioning it to his family. He remembered George's furious look after the $200 repair bill for his broken refrigerator. Tickets to the expo were over $3,000, and Sheldon, who always filed his own taxes, knew it was more than his family could afford. Thinking of this, Sheldon glanced at Locke, thinking he was quite tactful. He had mentioned it during an online chat, and he had agreed to invite his family to the expo. His expression was easy to understand, and Locke saw it immediately. Curling his lips, Locke thought to himself that if it weren't for the 300 potential points he needed to complete a mission, he wouldn't have spent so much money to invite the Cooper family to the expo. If it weren't for the mission, he wouldn't have treated them. After all, Sheldon was a rather clueless person, often taking others' kindness for granted. If it weren't for the potential points, He wouldn't have wanted to be friends with little Sheldon. Thanks to the island nation's stock market, Locke had made a killing, multiplying his funds several times over. He didn't care about this little pocket money anymore. Otherwise, Locke might have made a special trip to Las Vegas just to cover the entrance fee. "So where should we go first?" asked little George. He didn't like studying, but he was still fascinated by rockets and space. All these things sounded so cool. He wanted to see more so he could brag about them to the girls back at school. The group then pulled out their guidebook and began discussing where to go. As expected, Sheldon had already made plans and insisted on visiting the Rocketry Museum first. "Really? We drove 2 hours just to see a model rocket," Missy complained. He was more interested in trying out the new and exciting activities listed in the guidebook. "Why not? I can't think of any reason not to," Sheldon insisted. The Cooper family could not reach a complete consensus. George and his son were vaguely on Missy's side, while Mary was more inclined to Sheldon. Seeing them arguing, Locke looked at Peggy. "What are your plans?" "Let's go to the museum first, and then experience other projects," Peggy said. "Although those space experience projects are safe, they probably won't be too comfortable. They can be left until after the museum." "Okay," Locke thought about it, and said to George and Mary, who were in trouble, "Actually, there is no need to argue. We can act separately. Peggy and Sheldon both want to go to the museum first. He can go with us. Little George can go with Mr. Cooper, and Mrs. Mary, you can take Missy." Mary was in trouble at this time. After listening to Locke's words and thinking about it, she nodded and agreed. "Okay, Missy, you come with me. George, you take little George. Shelley, you play with Peggy and the others." "Why?" "I would rather my mother take me," Sheldon said bluntly, and there was disgust in his eyes when he looked at Locke. This look made Locke a little unhappy, and he picked him up directly. "Okay, Sheldon, you have to at least consider Missy. She also wants to play the activities, and your mother will take her with her. Just come with us." Sheldon was very light, and Locke lifted him up with one hand, which made him extremely panicked. In fear, he said sincerely, "Okay, I get it, put me down quickly." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.